Good evening and welcome to the June 19th, 2017 meeting of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good job, everyone. And we're on to item number 2, which is a quickie. It's public participation. If anyone would like to speak tonight about the agenda items or anything school district related, you just come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. If you're a student, just your name and your first name and your grade. Seeing none, I think you're all here for the same thing, so we will close public participation. And then we're going on to the highlight of the night, which is item number 3. It's the focus on student voice and inquiry at Reed's Ferry Elementary School. And I invite to the table Principal Kimberly Yarlott and Assistant Principal Nick Kohler, and they will introduce our educators and students. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate being here this evening, closing out the school year. We know that you have had lots of visitors and schools students coming and talking to you about this year. And I just wanted to give a little bit of context for what we're doing here with all of these wonderful, beautiful faces and educators. So as you know from the prior presentations, we're really trying to work a lot on integrating our content areas. In the past, we really have tried to retrofit the social studies and science into the ELA. And do the best we can. Students were more reading about social studies and science rather than really doing science. So towards that end, we really worked at August Academy to try to develop some units of studies that really started with some essential questions, really, really deep essential questions that were rigorous and that could be sustained over time, and to build units of study based on those essential questions that were grounded in social studies or science, and then filter all of the ELA and math standards and writing standards in the best we could. Last year we formed a committee at Reed's Ferry School of Teachers to try to look at how we could best approach this new way of thinking about the standards and the integrated practices. And tonight you're going to hear the IP word a lot. IP stands for integrated practices, and what we were challenged with when we went to embark on this endeavor as a committee was we really couldn't, we looked at our 5-day schedule and we couldn't find time. There was no time for additional writing activities. There was no time for students to be able to have, a core block for science and then a core block for social studies. So after many weeks and weeks and weeks of looking at this kind of dilemma, we came up with the notion of changing our 5-day instructional calendar to a 10-day instructional calendar. And within that 10-day instructional calendar, we added 2 days per grade level, so 2 out of the 10 days were devoted to writing. And then we took 2 days out of the 10-day schedule, and we call them our IP days. So what you're going to hear tonight is what is an IP day. And you're going to hear it firsthand from the students. And I need to say that this presentation is totally done by the students and the teachers. Nick and I have been hands-off. We told them the charge, and their voices and what they have to say are their own about what they've liked about IP days. And just to give you a little bit of context is that the whole day is devoted to a unit of study that has been, like I said, designed earlier in the year. That's a really rigorous unit that is applicable to what it is that the grade level team is expected to teach and what students are expected to learn and know. So in this model, cross-curricular standards are wed into a comprehensive units of study grounded in the essential questions that are focused on higher order thinking, student inquiry, and encouraging students to wonder. That's a word you're going to hear tonight, wonder. And to wonder some more, and to wonder some more. And from that wondering, they become engaged in authentic research to answer their questions.
Practices or IP days that are, as our students share their learning about what it looks like and sounds like during those days, you have a role too. So during the presentation, we encourage you to jot down your questions and thoughts and what you're wondering about as the student presentations. And afterwards, a panel of teachers will come forward and answer questions that you may have about the journey we embarked on, the challenges we faced, and the uniqueness of this endeavor, the differences that they have seen in student engagement and stamina for all of our students. And some of the differences were amazing. And please know that this was definitely not an easy shift for our teachers or for our students. There was a lot of risk-taking involved, a shift in mindsets, positive presupposition around problem solving, and we're greatly appreciative to all our students and our teachers who took the risk and embarked on this, because there's been so much growth during the year. And we're going to invite our first grade students and teachers forward to share the first piece with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we begin our learning, we ask you a lot of questions and share things we wonder. After we ask our questions and share our wonderings, we talk about them and try to figure out answers. Before we began learning about the life cycle of a chicken, our teacher showed us a bird's nest and challenged us to use biomimicry engineering to build one ourselves. We learned that bio means the study of life and mimicry means to copy. So it copied what a bird does in nature. These are some of the things we wondered about nests. I wonder why birds build nests. I wonder how they know how to build. I wonder what they use to build nests. I wonder how a nest stays together to hold eggs. I wonder how they know how to make a nest. I wonder how long it takes to make a nest.
This is a picture of our eggs in an incubator. Some questions we had about the incubator are, how will this incubator become mom to the chicks? When are the chicks going to hatch? Why are some of the chicks hatching early? Why are some of the chicks hatching late? What do they look like inside of the egg? What does it feel like to be inside the egg? This is a picture of us candling our eggs. These are some of the questions we asked. What is happening right now inside the egg? Will we see a chick? What is that black dot? Why do some eggs have nothing inside? Does the light hurt their eyes?
In this picture, the chicks are hatching inside of the incubator. We wonder many things like, I wonder how long will it take? Why can I hear chirping when the chick is still in the egg? Why are they wet? I wonder if they are hungry after they hatch. Why do they need to stay in the incubator after they hatched?
Here is a picture of our chicks. We still had many questions after they hatched. We wondered, are they going to fly? Will they hurt us? Why are they all huddled together? Will they be okay if they are away from the heat lamp? I wonder which ones are boys and which are girls. What will they look like when they are all grown up?
After we ask our questions, share our wonderings, and talk about our thoughts, we then start to explore our topic through books, videos, and hands-on projects. We work together in pairs, groups, and even with other classes.
Thank you so much. Second grade is up next.
In second grade, we focused our integrated practice days on our social studies units about the continents. We also integrated our science units about plant-animal relationships within these units of study. During our integrated practice days, we encouraged our students to work together in order to communicate, collaborate, and show off their creativity. Students were also given the opportunity to enhance their critical thinking skills through the inquiry process. As a culminating activity, each second grade classroom had their students choose a continent in which they wanted to further explore. Our students are going to share with you their knowledge on the inquiry process and their experience with our integrated practice days.
Our first step in the learning process was to record all the things we wondered about each continent, asking I wonder questions, helping us guide to our research so we know what we need to look for. Miss Cummings' class explored Europe, for example, when some of the famous landmarks were built. Like the Eiffel Tower or the Leaning Tower of Pisa. After coming up with our I wonder questions, we try to find the answers to our questions. We use different resources such as books, magazines, and online research. Our librarian, Ms. Puzzo, taught us research tools and strategies. The questions we couldn't find answers to, we continue to wonder about and search for.
Once our research was completed, we decided how we were going to show all that we learned. Each class showed their learning differently by transforming their classroom into their continent. In Europe, Mrs. Cummings' class made replicas of different landmarks such as the Eiffel Tower. In Asia, Mrs. Claire's class created dragons. In Africa, Mrs. McWayne's class created a large mural of the Serengeti Plain. In South America, Mrs. Townsend's class had rainforest animals hanging from the canopy. In Australia, Mrs. Johnson's class created aboriginally dot pattern boomerangs. This is just a little sample of the many things that were created.
After all of our help, we wanted to share our learning with other second graders and even our families. We had different ways of showing this. Sometimes we presented to different classrooms. Sometimes we went to other classrooms to learn, and then we put it back to our own classrooms. For our last presentation, we invited our families in to show all of our learning throughout the year. This was so much fun.
This year in second grade, we had so much fun with our integrated practice days. Here are some of our thoughts about our integrated practice days. We got to do something different, which gave us a break in our routine. We were able to learn more about some of our favorite science and social study topics. We had more time to experience new challenges while also making a lot of projects.
Thank you so much. And now we have third grade.
third grade use IEP days to investigate big ideas such as how does the climate impact on how and where we live.
As part of this investigation, we chose biomes we wanted to research. We worked with other students to research the biomes we chose.
We wanted to research the tundra, so we worked together to formulate questions and research them. Examples of our questions are what is the climate, and how do people impact the tundra?
We used multiple subjects to do our research. We took notes on index cards.
Then we made our own webs to organize our research.
We used information to write our own nonfiction books.
We shared our books with other third graders, so we all had a chance to learn about different biomes.
Learning about world biomes helped us determine that climate can impact how and where we live. Because depending on the climate you live in, there may be different resources and different jobs available to people. The climate in certain biomes may determine where people settle within that biome.
My favorite part of IP days was getting to work together.
My favorite part about IP days is we get to choose what I learned.
My favorite part of IP days is sharing ideas with other third graders.
Thank you, and now for the fourth graders.
Good evening. We are here to talk about the fourth grade integrated project on U.S. regions. We will each be discussing a different component of this project and takeaways. The fourth grade U.S. region project focused on our social studies, math, reading, and writing research standards. We were given the essential question, what makes your region unique, to investigate. Our teachers let us know that a big IP was coming up on U.S. regions. We got to vote in our classes on what region we wanted to investigate. Then the entire fourth grade met in the APR where we were introduced to the challenges we could select from when we studied our regions. Each classroom became a hub for one region and our workspace for the next 12 weeks. I was in Hawaii, which was the West region. Once we were divided into the regions, we made collaborative partners and chose our first challenge to explore.
Day 9 in our 10-day schedule is designated for our full day of IP work. During this time, we spent our day in our region room doing multi-source research on our region with our partners. Teachers acted as guides and helped us troubleshoot specific tech and research questions. For example, I was working on Challenge 2 with my partner, and we had to find physical features in our regions to build a resort next to. The day was busy with lots of activity and typing. In addition, teachers were available to help us include our librarian and gateway teachers. We used multiple resources, including internet research as well as text.
We really enjoyed the process because we had to discover all the information on our own. It was a different way to learn, and we all really engaged.
After we completed our region challenge, we started learning from each other. Teachers mixed us up again so everyone could learn about all the regions. Our presentations were graded by the teacher and peers. We collaboratively shared our products and taught each other what was unique about our region. It didn't matter what challenge we presented. We all learned the content standards and shared them in different ways. Here are our takeaways. I liked being able to mix up with other people and get others' thoughts on one big project. I found IP days are more fun than regular days because of the mixing up and collaborating.
I enjoyed IP projects. I think it's easier to learn by researching with a partner rather than doing a worksheet. I enjoy having access to the laptops and using my USB stick to research and create presentations.
I like mixing up with others. It's really fun. It's hard work to do work with the same classmates all the time. I like being able to choose my partner to know I could work well with that person. I like learning about the regions and putting it into my own creation to share about it.
I liked learning about the difference between regions. I liked working with others from different classes because on a regular day I don't get to see them. I like being able to pick partners and find a great group to work with. I like going to different classrooms and working with a different teacher and learning from them. I think I learn better in projects because I get to do the work. I get to do it on my own and get the learning for myself. Thank you.
As you have just seen and heard, we have been pretty busy this year, wondering, learning from research, and discovering new concepts. Right now we have a panel of Reed's Ferry teachers, kindergarten through grade 4, that can answer any I wonders that you may have. Please feel free to ask.
Are there any questions from the board? Naomi?
Well, I have a pragmatic question, but first I have a different one for the first graders, and that is, what happened to the chicks?
When they hatched, we gave them back to the farmer who had them first.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think the main question I had listening, other than and truly enjoying myself, was I was curious about two things about the process. Changing over into active learning or more active learning, because I have no doubt that you were integrating parts of this into your practice for years, has some unique challenges. And I'm curious both what you saw the students, and I'd be thrilled to hear their thoughts too if it's appropriate, on what was difficult and what was easy in making that change, and what you learned about helping students make that change.
I think one challenge that we came across at first, they started off asking questions, and then each month we seemed to get similar questions, and they weren't really deep thinking questions. So I know for our grade level we had to help them, letting them know that their questions were going to guide them through the research, and so if you are asking boring questions you're going to have some boring research, and that was one thing that we found. But one of the very big positives is that the level of student engagement and self-direction that the students took, it was really amazing. And as teachers we looked at our curriculum and we felt like we really went much deeper than we ever have in the past, and made such memorable experiences for them. I don't know if that answers it.
The one question I have is, this was all really good to see. The question is, I noticed there wasn't a presentation from the kindergarten side. And the question is twofold. One, how did you do this, the IP at the kindergarten level? And two, sort of pertinent to a discussion we're having later in the meeting, was a half a day enough to be able to do what you needed to do?
Thank you so much. I'm Chris Tebow, and I teach kindergarten at Reed's Ferry. And to answer your question, no, it's not enough time to do a full IP day in 2.5 hours. But what we did do is we were able to create a 10-day schedule for kindergarten. We just had to modify it to a half-day schedule. So some of the things that we focused during our IP time is pretty much setting the foundation for our students. You know, what does it mean to wonder? What does inquiry mean? What does it mean to have a problem? The basic skills of 5-year-olds learning how to work together. So just to give you an example, during Thanksgiving, we were just doing our regular Thanksgiving curriculum, and we decided to just start bringing in some problems, because when you ask a 5-year-old what a problem is, you can imagine what you get for answers. So we did a little bit of guided problem, prediction with the children, and things like, okay, you have a turkey, and we brought in a literature story that's called Turkey Trouble, and it's about this turkey that, is running from the farmer because he doesn't want, obviously, to be Thanksgiving dinner. So we would talk about, well, what's the problem? And then we would give them opportunities. They created places where the turkey could hide. So we tried to bring in, that whole inquiry problem solving in that way. Really looking forward to the opportunity where we can have a full day IP day. But we were able to, adjust it to our schedule, but, really taking a lot of information and being able to, have the kids just start wondering, what does it mean to wonder? What does it mean to ask questions? So that's how we kind of did it at the kindergarten level.
Michael?
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank all the young adults that came tonight and presented. I really appreciate it, and thank you for bringing your parents with you to see this. So I'd like to ask, going through everything, I obviously saw the different areas of education, such as, social studies, and then also science and just reading and literature and stuff like that. Thought that's wonderful. I was wondering what you saw as an impact to the children that came out of this compared to previous years. Did you see a big growth from all that experience of bringing it together, obviously, and also how did they work together beyond that? Like, did you see more teamwork coming from the class as a whole based off of them having to do that as groups? So, thank you.
I teach 4th grade. I'm Kate Merva. And we saw huge growth with the 4th graders, just in their ability to synthesize research, use multiple standards, and IP was really a place that every student shone. I think all the grade levels saw that. It was a place that we really got to see them deep in their understanding of how to present. I think you saw a little snap of that tonight. And really how to use multiple sources and use multiple content strands to get access information. Do you want to add to that?
I'm Kristen Herr. I teach 3rd grade at Reed's. One thing I would have to say is, you always have a population of students who are successful no matter how the information is presented to them. But I just found that this year every student felt so empowered and felt so successful. They could all use their strengths. They really worked together, and the classes really came together in a way that I hadn't seen before.
Any other questions? Andy?
And this is across any of the grades. Were there any situations where the students wanted to go above and beyond sort of what you had expected? I mean, how they pushed and wanted to talk more, even during the normal, not during the IP days or things like that?
I'm Sherry Rostock. I teach 1st grade. I definitely saw many opportunities of that. In 1st grade, we learned about criteria. So we had a challenge, and students were given criteria and constraints within every single challenge. And if I said, build a nest that could hold 3 eggs, I had students trying to build nests that could hold 10 eggs. They definitely went beyond. And they also made mistakes sometimes. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from 1st grade is It's a safe place to make mistakes, and what would you have done differently, and how could you do that? How about if I give you another hour? What could you do with that hour? And it's amazing what even first graders could come up with and how they could relate that to other areas. It's really nice to see.
I would add to that too that I had students in class who would go home and do further research or come in and show me things that they had put together at home, or just connections they made over the weekend. They would come and be, oh, remember when we were researching that? I had this experience this weekend, and that was really neat to see.
Excellent. I had a couple questions, and one was for the students. And I seem to hear a lot in your presentations that you seem to know the plan. So when you're doing all your projects, you know what standards you're looking for, you know what goals you have. Does that help you as your teachers are planning the day? They're not just showing you the stuff, but they're telling you what they hope you learn from the stuff before you learn it. Does that help you guys? Because you seem to be really active learners that way, aren't you? I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, yes, which I can't see at home necessarily, so I'm going to just spell it out for them. So that's the big thing. I think that's changed from when we were kids. Is, you know, we waited for the teacher to tell us what we needed to know, but now the teachers are telling you what you're going to learn, and then you learn it together, and you do more collaboration, and you know, I think you really own a lot of how you learn the process too, with the research that you're doing and the questions that you're asking. So, I mean, I think you guys are doing a great job, and I think, you know, your presentation shows how much you're really learning. And you're talking about standards a lot too. I heard that tonight. And I think that standards are, you know, we have many standards, but I think there's basic standards, and then there's you know, reach goals. And I see you guys doing a lot of reach goals. You're not looking to do the basics here. You're looking to learn as much as you can. Would you say that's true? Definitely. You want to learn more and more, even if it's you covered the basics, there's more to learn, right? So you guys are doing that every day in school, and I think that shows how very proud your teachers and your parents are of you. Because no one drove here, right? You all had to be driven by your parents? But those pedals are pretty far, aren't they? But honestly, I think that they're all here because they're really proud of what you're doing and how much you're learning. So keep up the good work. I can't wait to see you at the upper elementary school and the middle school and the high school. So you guys are doing a wonderful job. And your presentation shows how exciting learning is at Reed's Ferry, isn't it? Excellent. Mark?
So I just quick question for the teachers. So just like the students had to, I wonder, you know, and you demonstrated good examples of that. So I wonder what you all wondered when Mrs. Yarlott and Mr. Kohler prompted you to think a little differently about a 10-day schedule, and because that presented a problem. Problems aren't bad things; they're just things to work through. So, can somebody just describe sort of the process that maybe you all went through to work through the problem presented by the challenge that was put forth, and how you sort of worked through that over the course of the year?
Hi, Donna Johnson, second grade. One of the first things that I was wondering or maybe worried about, I like the 10-day schedule a lot right now. When she first showed it to us, I thought, ooh, reading groups. What if I don't do reading groups every day? Are my reading scores going to suffer? Or, you know, doing my math groups every day and having that consistency. So I said, well, you know, I know we're going to have to do reading and math through this process. In particular, one activity my class did is we were learning about Africa, and they wanted to know about the giraffe. So we found out how large the giraffe was, different size of its neck, and so forth. And all of a sudden it turned into this massive math project. And they created the giraffe with the floor tiles, and they created the giraffe with resources, and we had a life-size giraffe. And after I looked at it, I said, wow, that was a lot of math. And so I was still nervous through all the process, but as we did our assessments, I was looking at the data, and I said, okay, our reading scores went up, and okay, our math scores went up. So that was one of my things I was wondering about, and I was very pleased in the end to find that it works.
Thank you. Thank you. Part of the reason that I asked that question is because this is, I think, a great example of and versions of this have been presented, from our schools. But sometimes you can't always predict an outcome, but that isn't a reason to not try to do new things and to try to explore. And just like our students, sometimes, we'll find out that they try a new thing and it didn't work. But that's learning in and of itself. So that doesn't mean that it was a failure. It just means that now we'll have to figure out a way to make it better. So what I'm so grateful about with our teachers and our administrators is, always trying to just push the envelope a little bit to figure out if there's even a better way to deliver instruction. And if the answer is we got to still work out a few things, well, so you'll work out a few things. But I would think that's what anybody would expect of folks in our business to do, is to keep trying to figure out a new way to keep delivering great education. So I just appreciate your walking us through one example of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. So is Mrs. Yarlott coming back before? Okay, then I have a couple things to say as well then. So a couple things. I know you had an assembly a couple of weeks ago, and Mrs. Yarlott was Principal of the Year, and you had the assembly before she went and got her award. Did she show you her award? Did you get to see her bell yet? Uh-oh, I think you need to bring it in by Wednesday. Okay, put you on the spot. So, but just to acknowledge, because you're here tonight, congratulations on being New Hampshire's Elementary Principal of the Year. And it just shows by the way she did her presentation tonight. The first thing she did was, she was a great leader today, wasn't she? She gave the teachers and the students all the credit and let you guys shine, didn't she? So, because she knows all the hard work you do, and she wants to make sure that everyone knows how hard you do work. So, good job, and that's why she is who she is, getting that great award. And then this is the melancholy part. Mr. Kohler, there you are. Mr. Kohler is leaving the district. I get so teared up about this, but he was my kid's assistant principal, so he came when my kids were there. So thank you for your service to Merrimack. We're wishing you all the success. You're going to be a principal in a school in Massachusetts, and congratulations, and we wish you all the success. You know you had tenure once you got through the Barnes kids anyway, right? You didn't have to. So, but thank you all very much. Okay. Now the room's going to get a lot cooler very fast. So, and we will wait for them to clear out for the next item. We're still clearing out because we had a very full house. So we are going to move on to item number 4, which is the initial discussion regarding the development of a proposal for full-day kindergarten. So I will turn the mic over to Mrs. Chaffrey when we are ready.
So I'm pleased to welcome to the table Principal Bellemare, Principal Yarlott, and Principal-elect Romaine. And I want you to know, as you could see by the memo that I put in your packet, that, believe it or not, it's not that far away that we're not going to be working on our next budget for the year 2018-19. And to that end, one of our goals, part of our vision, is to take a look at the possibility of looking at full-day kindergarten. So the principals have really done yeoman work thus far in beginning to do an investigation and draw up some information, and tonight they're going to share with you what has been amassed so far. And we also realize that you, the governing board, who will make a final decision, probably have some questions of your own. So the thought was tonight we'd begin the discussion, the dialogue, with the idea that they and teachers, kindergarten teachers, will come back in the fall to either have another discussion and or present a formal proposal. But we really wanted to do this apart from the budget process because we think it's so important to be able to clarify any and all issues that you might have and to be able to conduct a full investigation of any question you might have. So with that, I will ask if you would begin.
Thank you, Mrs. Chaffrey, and thank you for inviting us to the school board for this presentation or this information session. Principal-elect Michelle Romaine is here from Mastercola Elementary School and Bridie Bellemare from Thornton's Ferry School, and I'm here from Reed's Ferry School. And just to begin the discussion about future possibilities relative to supporting a full-day kindergarten program. In order to begin the dialogue with the school board and with the community, we embarked on gathering some preliminary information relative to current research, impacts, and viabilities. Emily Carter, Bridie Bellemare, and I conducted 3 site visits at schools who are in their first year of implementation of full-day kindergarten. That was at Mast Elementary School in Lee, Wilkins Elementary School in Amherst, and Hollis Primary School. We purposely selected schools that were in their first year of implementation for many reasons. One being that their research would be most current. Secondly, what they went through, the steps that they took to go through the process were still fresh in their mind in terms of what were their obstacles, what were their biggest obstacles, and also what were the joys, what were they discovering in that first year of implementation. So we met with administrators and kindergarten teachers to learn about their initial planning, the implementation phases, and the current practices. They were really generous with sharing the research they gathered relative to the benefits, the costs associated with the programs, and daily schedules, the scope and sequence of curriculum, and so forth. In these districts, relied on surrounding districts for their initial presentations, as it's important to know that full-day kindergarten is not the exception in New Hampshire. 2015-2016 data from the DOE reports that there are 103 SAUs in New Hampshire offering full-day kindergarten currently. And other data supports that throughout the country, where we at 78% of public schools across the country with full-day programming. So as mentioned on the onset, we're at the stage of information gathering. We're eager to work with you going forward to determine next steps and viable options. Mrs. Romaine's going to briefly share with you some of the research that we've gathered to this point, although we certainly look to uncover more research going forward. And Ms. Bellemare is going to discuss potential impacts on the schools and public. And again, it's important to know that this is at the information gathering stage and at the dialogue stage. Thank you.
In looking at the research, full-day kindergarten is a sound educational investment. Research demonstrates that full-day kindergarten not only boosts students' academic achievement, it strengthens their social and emotional skills as well. As we know, a child's social and emotional development is critical to their academic success. In addition to these positives, there are benefits to teachers and parents. Teachers have more time to get to know their students and more time to work with them. Parents are provided with quality full-day care and instruction for their children. There is an immense amount of research on the benefits of full day. A landmark study done by researchers Jill Walston and Jerry West found that the students who participated in full-day kindergarten demonstrated higher achievements in reading and mathematics than those in half-day programs. Additional research on full day kindergarten demonstrates, among other benefits, higher achievement for students receiving Title I services, better attendance in kindergarten and in the other primary grades, higher test scores, and fewer retentions and remediations in future grades. Participating in full day kindergarten also provides more opportunities to provide challenging activities for students and more time to provide interventions to students when necessary. In the area of social emotional benefits, research outlines a number of benefits to a full day program. A 20-year study completed 2 years ago and published in the American Journal of Public Health showed a link between children's social skills in kindergarten and their well-being in early adulthood. Having students participate in full day programs gives them adequate time to learn and practice these social skills in an unhurried and authentic manner, matching the development of these early learners. While some parents are worried about their children sustaining a full day, research shows that 5-year-olds are ready and, in fact, do better in a setting that allows them time to learn and explore activities in depth. The research overwhelmingly supports the implementation of a developmentally appropriate full-day kindergarten program as part of a child's early learning continuum. There are many more studies that we would be happy to share at a later date. We will also continue to look at current practices throughout the state and the Northeast. Thank you.
In addition to having conducted the action research previously referenced by my colleagues, we will continue to assess impacts as they apply to space utilization, staffing, furniture, and programmatic needs. It's also important that we mention that as we move forward in gathering more information in support of this initiative, that we do remain sensitive to our community partners who currently offer educational programming and child care services to many of our families of the Merrimack School District. It is our intent to remain transparent with our partners and members of the broader community to ensure they are equally informed throughout our course of action. Lastly, we ask that the board please share any additional areas for our review or consideration as we move forward with our full day planning and assessment of needs. We thank you for your consideration of our requests, and we are happy to entertain any questions you might have at this time. Thank you.
I see Andy so far, and Michael's next, and then we'll just go
No
around.
shortage of questions at the table. So the first thing that comes to mind when you think is that Merrimack's had half-day kindergarten for many years now, and it's 12, yeah, many, yes, many. I didn't quantify it, but anyway, but there's a morning and an afternoon program, right? So the immediate thing that you think of is that if every student stays all day, or a number of them stay all day, it will have an impact in terms of space, staffing, and things like that. So I guess the question is, you alluded to the fact that it's something on your radar, but have you started to look at, based on what you would imagine that we would have, what we'd be looking at, do the schools each have enough space to run additional classes? Do you have any sort of initial thoughts about that? Because that'll be the first question that comes up for me anyway.
As far as specific details for you at this point, no, we don't have specific numbers and details. What we can share is that we continue to conduct a thorough analysis at the building-based level and are beginning to come together across the 3 buildings to look at comparatives and discuss how many rooms would we be talking, what furniture do we already have in district that could be shared, and what resources that exist that could be leveraged. So that information we intended to share during the second phase of our rollout.
And the reason is because I know that in each of the schools you're using rooms. I mean, obviously the dynamics changed 12 years ago when you started kindergarten and you moved 5th grade out into the upper L, and you've utilized the space for other reasons, for either special ed rooms or other kinds of activities. So part of it is not only how many more staff you're going to need to do this and how many rooms will it take, but what impact does it has on the other services that you do in each of the buildings. And I know it's going to vary depending on which building you're in. But to me, understanding all that will be important, because we hear all the time about how the district is sort of shrinking in terms of number of students, but now we're talking about taking a population and doubling the time that they're in the building. So obviously there'll be impacts. So that's going to be probably one of the fundamental parts. Because for me personally, the concept of, you don't have to sell me on an all-day kindergarten, because as a kid and where I came originally. Before I've been in Merrimack like forever, but before that I was in the Midwest where that was the norm. All full day kindergarten, that was just the way it was. So I saw the value in it even before I came, and was disappointed for 40 some years that we never did that in this state. So I'm happy to see we're growing into it. So I see the value for sure, but it's, to me, can we handle the growth to it?
And I think Michael's next. Sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to that as well. As Ms. Bellemare said, we are starting to look at those impacts, and we'll look at priorities for spacing, absolutely. An initial projection would be that we might have as many as 80 additional students, so that we look at that across the 3 schools, and we say, okay, how many classroom spaces does that take? And roughly 2. So we've all started to look at our maps, to take into consideration what our priorities are. And as you know from all of our presentations, we're visionary and we're problem solvers. So we appreciate that you bring up those impacts and also maybe those hurdles, and we also look at possibilities. Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you for coming tonight in regards to this. And you've talked a little bit about the research and some of the information that you've already gathered. I was wondering, maybe, Marge, if there's a way to actually set up a folder within Office 365 that this information could actually be put up so that we can all access that and read the information.
I think it would be great, and I think the information that Michelle shared tonight, because that was said, could be posted up, and then as we go forward, we'll continue to just populate it.
Yeah, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Naomi?
Yeah, I'm another person who doesn't have to be sold on the importance of all-day kindergarten. I think that the things that I'll be interested are more pragmatic. And one of the things I'd really I think would be useful not just for me but for others to hear as we move forward has to do with one phrase you used, which was developmentally appropriate. There is a huge amount of research that shows that kindergarten is wonderful, but not all kindergarten. And we have an opportunity to do it right and to show that what we're creating does provide the thing that research shows makes a difference. And I think that with the people at the table, there's no question that that's already being discussed. I think having that talked about and open so people can see it would be hugely beneficial in bringing people to support it.
I appreciate that comment, especially because we came across one article that was entitled Doing Full Day Kindergarten Right, and the importance of getting it right. It's not just to do it so that we answer the needs of parents in terms of childcare, but to really look at the curricular impacts, to look at the developmentally appropriate programming, and that's the exact title of that research. So we certainly look forward to sharing that and appreciate that comment.
Michael, then Andy?
I just want to discuss what 2 of my co-board members talked about and how they already feel that they have the understanding that kindergarten has its benefits and everything. I'm actually going to take an approach where I need to be shown that it definitely is there's a benefit. I have my own bias, but sitting as a board member, I'm going to take the approach that I have to take in all the information and then make a decision based off of that. So again, all the information that you guys have would be greatly appreciated. So thanks.
Andy?
So just out of curiosity, you talked about doing research with other districts where you visited some and you did statistics of how many districts in the state are doing full day and stuff. So the question that we're going to be running against, you've heard about the state budget, where, funding for full day kindergarten, whether it's going to come or not. I know that earlier on when we were talked about, right now there's half day kindergarten, but there's also an after school program for students to do morning, that can do the afternoon with a program to maybe help in certain areas, but that's funded by parents. So the question is, what push, do you know at all if there's been any pushback in these other districts you talked to about the town in terms of funding this, or do you happen to know if they're funded fully so the parents don't have to pay anything? Do they have to pay partially for the all-day part of it? Or did you gather any of that data or stumble across any?
There is theme and variation, to your point. Some districts, though we're finding fewer and fewer, are funded half days by parents, but some of those districts have moved away from that towards full day funding by the district. But there is still some theme and variation that exists, you're right.
Did it, just to follow up, did it sort of start where it was funded by parents, and then when they found it was successful, then the district would fund the whole day? Did you see a progression maybe like that?
I can't say, if you're looking for statistics, I don't have the accurate information around the statistics. What I can say is through two venues, through our action research, our site visitations, through our association, the New Hampshire Elementary School Principals Association, and talking with our colleagues, there's just a mix of how people are providing children with this full day experience.
Right, because as you know, you have two groups that we respond to. One are parents of students that will be sending kids through our school system, and then there's a general taxpayer base, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll get one set of response from parents that are working about their costs, and then taxpayers in general about the overall cost. So that level of data is important for us to know what the rest of the state is doing. So as you do other research, we'll do our own, but as you do your research, if you happen to gather any of that, that would be helpful as well.
Marge, do you have something on that?
I just wanted to say that as committed as we are, I think, to the concept, and please, if you disagree, say such, I think we really want to embark on this where we would think about offering this benefit to all. I think there's something about saying that those who can pay for this can have it, and those that can't. And I think we think it is so significant for an early learner that we want to just be about doing everything we need to do so that we can offer it to all of our young children. Now, that doesn't completely answer your question, Andy. We've got some investigation to do, but I think it's important for us to just lay on the table what we're committed to.
Any other questions? I have a couple. Based on the enrollment projections that we get from NESDEC, I keep getting it wrong every year, from NESDEC, we have obviously the number of students born that are living in our district, and we get that year over year. What percentage of those numbers do you expect will come to the full-day kindergarten program now that there's two-way transportation as well? Do we have that?
I think when Kim alluded to the fact that we're thinking of approximately 80, the fact of the matter is that all of those community partners that were alluded to are the ones who have many of our kindergartners now. And so over the years, as I've talked with NESDEC and the School Boards Association, we're estimating between 60 and 80. So what we'll do is try to drill down and get a little bit more defined, especially if we make that a part of our presentation in the fall. But that's our best estimate.
Gotcha. And then I know that all the elementary schools have an after-school program for the students. Is that also going to be, will the kindergarten students be folded into those availabilities as well? I think the National Adult Program is one of them that does it.
So we have an after-school program, and then we have the K enrichment or K plus program, which I believe is what you're referencing. So
the after-school for like when the kids would get on the bus, but the parents are still working till 5 o'clock.
Right. Yep. So that's the extended day program, and yes, we will be offering that. We've actually expanded it to offer an additional session at Master Cola next year.
Excellent. And that would be, of course, at the cost of the parents, just to clarify. So, in case there was a question at home. Those were actually the questions that I had on it. I know that there's a lot of research that will be coming, a presentation, and then budgetary impacts for making those recommendations. So if there's anything else, Andy, go ahead. No, here, shut you off.
No. Fine. I just want to say the reason I was asking the questions is to ask the hard questions now so you know what to come with. Because when we get into budget time, the last thing I want to do is blindside one of you guys or anybody in administration with questions like this. So these are just sort of the seeds to think about as you go through, because those are the questions that we'll be asking from academic, because Michael's looking for the academic part, which is good to have, and the financial part, because this will be just like we brought kindergarten in years ago, there was some state funding that was there, but there was also, we had to show to the taxpayers the benefit. And we'll have to do the same thing again here, and knowing the answers and and having the data to support it is key. So,
well, we appreciate the hard questions because we do want them at the forefront, and that's one of the purposes of this meeting right now is to find out what it is that you would like us to research. I did want to add too that what's considered oftentimes a K plus, which is an extension to kindergarten offered to parents for pay, is not with a certified teacher, and it's more play-based. so you level the playing field so that some students aren't being privy to more instruction than others. And I want to go back to our IP and our 10-day calendars that we're currently working with full-day curriculum for the math and for the reading, and we're crunching it into a half-day program. So the extended programs right now that are options for pay only are not run by certified educators and not considered part of kindergarten. So I would go back to that notion of if doing it right would be a true full-day model where the curriculum is a full-day curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
So I just wonder if the three principals could just address this because now is a good time. So as you all know, in a way, as a way to try to address the hours requirement for in response to the snow, we had to do some creative thinking around kindergarten, and on June 19th was the last of the 3 days that students attended full-day kindergarten. So, so do you just have some little anecdotal information about what that programming was, and even more specifically to talk about the numbers of people who took advantage of that option? Not necessarily hard numbers, because I didn't ask you to prepare for this, but just now is a good time to talk about it since we're together.
I can tell you at Master Cola, we had 100% student participation in the full day program all 3 days. We used the time to do a lot of project-based learning where the students had more time to work through different problems. For example, they made ice cream last week, and they had time to figure out what would happen. It tried to make it with different items and different ingredients. We also had time to provide outside programming for them. Our PAC group paid for a presentation by the Audubon Society, which are things that we try to do with kindergarten, and yet due to the time constraints sometimes just don't happen. So those are a couple of things we did at Master Cola.
So at Reed's Ferry School, we had 1 to 2 students not participate in the full day, so otherwise it was fully staffed and full participation. The students did a variety of activities, worked through different centers, either for fine motor, gross motor, academic. They had math centers, reading centers, and again got to go outside and practice doing lunch, which was a favorite. And I think the days looked like no other. I mean, it was pretty amazing how seamless it was. I was probably the biggest wreck in terms of just making sure the kids got on the right bus at the end of the day and those little details, but the students were absolutely fine, and it was a wonderful experience.
Similar to Reed's, we had only 1 or 2 students that opted out. Center-based activities, play-based activities. We did some STEM activities, launched rockets that they made out of straws and paper, and included some measurement elements with that. And of course, we ate in the cafeteria, which was a big deal. My favorite comment on the 3rd day was from a kindergarten student who said, "I never knew first graders worked so hard." So full day, they were tired. We had some sleepers on the bus at the end of the day, heads on the desk at the end of the day. So we kept them very busy, but it was a great experience.
I just realized that I got my 6 and my 9 confused. So it was the 16th was the last day. But it's also important to just mention that parents had an option to completely opt out or to choose to be, full day on one of the 3 days or all of the 3 days, or a variety of options. And so what you heard is that the parents in our community, when given that option, most overwhelmingly chose to avail themselves of the full day experience. So, anecdotal, but it is somewhat important to just imagine, interest that lies in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I think when we're talking about kindergartners as well, a lot of kids will come into the school district already having a daycare experience. So a full day in a room full of other people's children is the norm. So I know you have a mix, but there are some of those where it's just a more structured and engaging environment in which to spend their day. So the parents are probably very appreciative that you exhausted them with all that knowledge. So, but that said, I think this is a great opportunity for our district to, at this point, it's June 19th. Budget season is not next week, thank God, because it's too hot. But it's around the holiday season. But this is a great time for us to get feedback from families, feedback from constituents. We know that you're watching because we hear from you. Sometimes online, sometimes over the phone. But if there is feedback that you have on this is a good time for us as a board to hear the community's thoughts, the parents' thoughts that will be looking to prepare their children for our school district, and those who went through maybe feel that it would have been a great thing for their kids as well. So this is a great time to gather feedback and communication, and we will have our website full of data that has been collected, so we'll be in a good place to have an engaging conversation in the late fall. So thank you very much. Excellent. And I'm finally going to remember this. I do this every time a board member cannot come, and I forget until about item number 5. Cinta Gualyumi is excused from tonight's meeting, and student representative Zev Cernak has graduated, so he was no longer our student representative. We'll look forward to inviting or welcoming a new board member in the fall from the school district, from the student body. So with that, we are on to item number 5, which is the second review of the proposed board policy for wellness. And Bridie Bellmare's still here and kicking. There you go. Welcome back. It's a little warm in here.
Well, thank you. So my intention here this evening is to first thank the board for their insights during the first review of the policy that the District Wellness Committee had previously presented earlier this month. At the end of the last meeting, there were 3 additional recommendations entered by the board for our committee to take under advisement. And I first want to ask, do members of the board have the current policy with the, okay, excellent, thank you. So if I can please reference the 3rd bullet on the first page. We struck the word instruction and entered the word education. Provides education in the areas of social, emotional, and mental health intended to nurture overall well-being. The committee was in agreement with that recommendation. The second recommendation made by the board was under nutrition guidelines and education, the very last statement, to strike the word encourage and instead to read schools shall be mindful of the availability, strike integration, of balanced food options during celebrations and events. Again, the committee supported that recommended language. Lastly, and Marge, please correct me if I've missed something from this last statement, but it's my understanding that the board recommended that the committee itself actually be responsible for the oversight of the 3-year assessment of the policy that's required by the USDA under the new regulations, the provisions that were outlined in 2016. And in my conversations with Superintendent Chaffrey and with our food service director, Dave Zicki, we went back to that legislation, and it does, in fact, specifically reference that the district or the LEA is the responsible body, governing body for reviewing the policy and the role of the Wellness Committee. So we would ask the board to take that information into factoring having our current language remain intact, that it would be the district's responsibility to oversee that process, not the committee.
Any questions on Naomi?
I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate very much these being addressed, especially in the nutrition and guidelines and education. They're small word changes, but it's helpful when it makes people comfortable with the idea that's being expressed. It was a little bit post-meeting, so I wanted to put this in and say that piece on the record. I think that what was being expressed with Cinda and myself was the idea that there have been situations that school boards and districts have found themselves inadvertently in where they are discouraging traditional ice cream or pizza availability, or making a situation where parents can't bake a cake without having intended that in the first place. So I think that the softening of the language was meant to make sure that this wasn't a statement against that kind of community food activity. And I like the fact that it was incorporated very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marge?
Are there any additional questions or recommendations
No.
at this time?
I would say Bridie really did great communication between, and it was board members Guglielmi and Schoenfeld that came up with the word changes. The other board members were really not privy to that. It was at the end, and I think that's the way the board acts. We put something out, and then if one of you, two of you, see something that you want changed, to mention it. In this particular case, the Wellness Committee is very active. It is they who are really pushing this policy forward. So it was appropriate that they have a chance to go back and look at the modifications, and I was very pleased that the word changes they felt very comfortable with. And in fact, it is the legislation that's guiding the last piece. We need to keep that the same. So what I would hope, and I'm sure Bridie on behalf of the Wellness team would hope, that if there were not to be any other questions, we would be happy to take them if necessary. But if not, we would hope that we could put this on consent for July 17th, with the idea that this new policy then would become something that would be introduced at the beginning of the new school year.
Does that sound good for everyone else? If for any reason a question comes up, we can always pull this off consent. Just let Marge and I know before the Friday before the next meeting, and then we can make adjustments to the agenda as needed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll get to the car and get some air conditioning on, right? And we are on to item number 6, which is the fourth quarter curriculum review. And leading the discussion will be Dr. Mark McLaughlin and leadership from around the district. So I'll let you introduce them as they come up.
So I'll just encourage the team to gather at the mics. And while they do that, I'd like to just, at the risk of stating the obvious, I would just point out that you've seen a number of members of our leadership team tonight come to the microphone, present some information about an initiative they're working on, sit back down for a few minutes, then come back again. This is a microcosm of what happens in our district every day, and I just think it's important for our community, I know our board knows this, but our community to know that in addition to the outstanding job that they do as site-based leaders, in Merrimack we really get a lot out of our folks, and each one of these people are instrumental in every good thing that we do in the district. So the fact that they're coming to the microphone, sitting back down, coming back again, I think is an example of the breadth of their and the scope of what they do. And I might also say that's true of teachers, because the teachers who are before you also their real job is teaching students. And in addition to that, they give of their time to do so much else for our district. So just for the viewing audience at home who might not necessarily recognize that or see familiar faces, that's true every day in Merrimack. So tonight is the last curriculum review, and you might say maybe the most important one we've done this year. By way of just a brief reference to other content, the most important thing that I could point out, and I think Mr. Morris is, there he is. You'll be seeing Mr. Morris later on in the summer, and the science team as they present to you the final draft of the science curriculum. And that work has continued unabated through the course of this year, again with a team of administrators and teachers. And we continue to do our work with the health and phys ed curriculum. And I am confident that perhaps a year from now we'll be with you to provide you an update on the status of that and the potential for implementation of that. But really the focus tonight is on the mathematics program and program selection. And I'm going to ask Marcia McGill, the principal of the Upper Elementary School, to introduce the team. But I just would like to just say that this is, and I know that, there are, it seems like if I were to replay the tapes of myself over time, you sort of like a broken record, like, oh, they're so great, they're so great. So I just, at the risk of sounding like I just say it reflexively, I just want to say, we don't give praise just because in Merrimack. I mean, you have to earn it. But the fact that these people have been able to produce the body of work that you'll see in a few minutes on something so critical, the fact that they can do that is a testament to the incredible professionalism of the teachers and the administrators on this team, and it just cannot be taken for granted. And I know none of us here do, but sometimes it's worth saying it too. So I really thank everybody, and not everybody who is on that team is even here tonight, but rest assured that everybody who is here and those who are not really, really did a service for our district just by the effort that they put in to tackling such an important topic. So having said that, and my thanks, maybe Mrs. McGill can just introduce the team and then begin.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting us to present this evening. And with us this evening, we have our math department head from Merrimack High School, Rhonda Lude. We also have with us, assistant or principal-elect from Masterville Elementary, Michelle Romaine. We have the math facilitator from Reed's Ferry School, Emily McElwain. And we have the math facilitator from Thornton's Ferry School, which is Laura Howe. Nick Kohler, assistant principal at Reed's Ferry School. We have the math coordinator for Merrimack Middle School, Cheryl Smith. We have the math facilitator from the upper elementary, Helen Fitzgerald. And we have the math facilitator from Masterville Elementary, Megan Donegan. I'd also like to recognize Mr. William Morris, who has also done work with us on our math committee. I know he's been so busy with the science, but he's also offered a lot of help on our math committee, so nice bill there. Would like to start this evening by sharing with you that our math committee came about in the summer of 2015. And throughout that summer, we worked to develop a 3-year action plan. And that action plan has guided us through our work, through now our second year. So now I'd like to share with you a little bit about the work that we've done this second year. We were here in November and we shared with you, but we'd like to let you know that what we've done. And our work really has been twofold. First of all, our work has been on revising the Merrimack math curriculum K through 12. And the second part of that is evaluating current programs to make a recommendation as to which program will support our curriculum best. So I'd like to start this evening with a little bit of information about the math curriculum division and the process that we went through. Our committee initially started with, administrators, facilitators, coordinators, department heads. We then expanded our team. We expanded it to use or to include teachers from all grade levels, across the district. We wanted to be representative of all buildings and all grade levels. And we wanted to then utilize those teams to help us, build our work with our curriculum. So after we expanded that team, we got together and we started to review, current curriculums that are out there and structures that are out there or frameworks that are out there for different curricula in different districts and different states. So we looked at that and we came upon, or we determined from that, what did we want the Merrimack framework to look like. So we're going to show you that in just a few minutes. And we decided that and we worked with that. We then took our grade level teams and our SPAN teams and we looked at the standards, the college and career ready standards. And from those standards, we determined what the concepts and skills were, what we wanted children to know and be able to do. So we identified those in there. From that, we then developed work examples for each standard. We associated the math, standards for mathematical practice to each one of those standards. Then we looked at that as a whole and we developed enduring understandings and essential questions for the, excuse me, I'm a little far behind on that. Nick, you should have just grabbed my reach over there. Those are our grade span teams, so you can see that. I'm sorry, I forgot to go ahead. I was too busy talking. Our grade span teams, so representative, and then talked a little bit about the work we've done. I started by telling you about unpacking the standards, those concepts and skills, the work examples, and essential questions and enduring understandings. We then got into interdisciplinary teams K-12 to really do a critical review, an extensive review of the work that we had done. So we had these two teams, one really working on the enduring understandings and the essential questions, while the other team was working at that review of what all those work samples were that we put in there for teachers. Then doing a switch over so that everyone could really look at it and make sure that we have a trajectory of learning across grades. We've completed K-8, and as a result, we have an initial math curriculum that includes up through K-8 and Algebra 1 at this time. Algebra 2 and geometry through the high school is still in process.
What you see before you is a sample of a fifth grade curriculum, and every grade level is set up the exact same way. It's in this particular standard is operation and algebraic thinking in the fifth grade. As Marsha referred to, the college and career readiness cluster is written there. You'll see different highlights in yellow and blue. Those are vocabulary words that we want the students to know, skills that we want them to know. Every curriculum also has understandings, enduring of understandings. It has essential questions for both the teachers and the students to follow by. It refers to, down the bottom left-hand corner, what we want the students to know and be able to do. It will list the mathematical practices in each sample page. And again, it will also, the most important piece, I believe, is examples and samples for the teachers that you'll see about what we want the students to know, be able to do. Again, it's color-coded in blue and yellow. That will hopefully help the teachers through the process. This took a lot of time. It took a lot of energy for people to be doing this, but we made sure that as we were going through the process that we didn't miss anything that we wanted the students to know. The Algebra 1 curriculum at the high school is set up the same way too. So as Marsha said, it is a K through 8 curriculum as well as the algebra at this point.
So with a new curriculum and new standards, it makes sense that we would want to be evaluating our current math program and resources that we were using. So we started in what's been a little bit over a year in the exploration of math programs that are available. So the very first step that we took was to look at a variety of different published math programs that are available. We looked at districts around the state. We looked at districts close to us. We looked at districts with assessments, with high assessment scores, to see what they were using. We looked at a variety of different programs that are out there, and if you've looked at all, there are a number of programs. So in order to narrow it down, we then developed a rubric to look at what would be the most important parts that we would be looking for in a math program. And so we used some recommendations from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. We used some of the recommendations of the classroom teachers and math facilitators on our committee. And we narrowed it down to 3 programs that we wanted to look into investigating further through a math evaluation process. So our 3 finalists were the 3 that you see up there: Envision, Math 2.0, Go Math, and Math and Focus. So once we had the 3, we needed to design an evaluation process that would give the most time, face time, for the teachers with different programs, as well as give teachers experience with different programs to see which one met the needs of our learners in Merrimack. So you can see the program evaluation team. There were 23 educators, meaning that 23 different teachers in our district had their hands on 2 of the 3 programs over the course of the evaluation time. You also see the evaluation team, the administrators, and then the facilitators did not have programs in their classroom. And we purposely did that because we were looking to keep the validity of all of the evaluation as clear and as consistent as we could. So we asked the facilitators to be a part of all of the trainings. We asked the facilitators to be a part of scoring each of the programs with the classroom teachers so that we could try to keep all information gathered valid and reliable. So our evaluation system was a little bit different than typical pilots that we've seen, and we talked about this at length. Typically, when a district is looking for a new program, it's because what they have is not currently meeting their needs. And so half of the teachers will pilot program A, and half of the teachers pilot program B. And at the end of the 6 weeks or whatnot, all of the teachers that use program A like program A, and all of the teachers that liked program B used program B, chose program B. So what we did was set it up so that each of the teachers I mentioned had access to 2 different programs over the evaluation time. So we looked across the district, K to 12. We had educators from all schools. We had input at all grade levels. The teachers worked with the facilitators and publishers of the program to identify the units that would best line up with what our kids would be doing in our curriculum anyway. And then they taught that program for that time frame. At the end of the first session, each classroom teacher or educator sat and filled out a rubric that was similar to what we started with, but we had changed a little bit of it to include more information from the educators relevant to education. Then they also submitted surveys that they sent to parents, and they led classroom discussions with their classrooms. And then we got together and did a 2.5-hour meeting where each of the teachers that were using a particular program came and discussed the program and then again filled out the rubric. And this was a chance for teachers to share different parts that they had used and to be sure that we were accurately reporting on each of the programs, and it wasn't that a teacher hadn't accessed a particular place maybe on the website where another teacher could say, oh, I did do that and I found it to be X. So each teacher did between 4 and 5 weeks with each program. There were some timelines that we shifted due to publishing moves, and then some of the teachers kept programs to complete throughout the rest of the year after using them for the short time. So in total, we had 39 classroom evaluation sessions were completed, and we gathered input from the students, the teachers, as well as math facilitators throughout the process.
So in order to create an authentic rubric that could be used by teachers during the evaluation process, the team of math facilitators and the department heads took time to research other rubrics and best practices that would benefit our students and educator based on the 10 domains that you see listed. And then the math curriculum team helped to refine the final rubric. And every teacher that evaluated a math program within their classrooms completed this rubric. The math committee used these results to further determine the selection of a program.
On this slide, you'll see quantitative data that represents how the 3 programs scored in 4 of the domains from our rubric: standards alignment, assessments engaging to the learner, and student resources. Each of the domains is scored on a 4-point scale, 1 being not evident, 2 being partially evident, 3 being sufficiently evident, and 4 being extensively evident. The first domain, standards align, is represented by the teal bar on the graph. One of the many indicators of this domain is that the program promotes high levels of rigor. A second example is that the standards for mathematical practice are embedded in the lessons and activities. The second domain is assessments. It is represented by the seafoam green color. An example of one of the indicators under this domain is that formative assessments are built into units and provide useful information. Another example is that test result interpretation tools are provided and useful. The third domain, engaging for the learner, is represented by the yellow color. An example of an indicator is that authentic learning experiences are included to promote use of higher order thinking skills to solve real-world problems. The fourth domain, student resources, is represented by orange. An example is that student materials are accessible online.
I'm going to talk about the next 4 domains that were part of the rubric: teacher resources, professional development, home to school connections, and differentiation. So we came up with indicators within the rubric under each of these domains. For teacher resources, we wanted the teacher's guide to be well organized, easy to use. The teacher's guide and resources we also wanted to be made available digitally. Preparation of lessons and materials was manageable. Under professional development, it was really important that educators would have opportunities to really understand the program. So we were looking for training to allow teachers to implement the components of the program effectively to best deliver instruction to students. Online resources, videos, blogs, webinars were all part of that. Also, homeschool communication is very important. So we wanted to be sure that homework was applicable, developmentally appropriate, that there were resources available to parents to support their children at home. And the last domain is differentiation. We wanted to be sure that the program had intervention and extension lessons and activities for the students for small group instruction. We also wanted to be sure that there were centers that were varied and appropriate for kids to be able to independently practice these skills.
And the last 2 choices were technology and learner outcomes. In the technology part of the rubric, we were looking for online resources that were compatible with our iPads and laptops within our classrooms. We were looking for the digital tools that would allow the teacher to differentiate and individualize learning materials and assessments. The online resources, were they easily accessible, user-friendly, and were they also available to students, parents, and teachers? And the units, how do they promote mastery of a specific standard? The second part, learner outcomes. Here we were looking for the guided practice, was it present, and then the individual class practice. Yet we found that in speaking with the learner part, the students enjoyed having the skills, seeing the practice of the skills. But when it came down to the rigor of the mathematical practices and the problem-solving practices, that became more evident within Envisions. For example, a 5th grade student would have a typical word problem could be, Teresa buys 3 containers of tennis balls for $2.98 a container. Her mom gives her a coupon for $1, and now they have to split the cost of their 3 containers of tennis balls. Students have to write the expression, and they have to solve the problem. And that was the rigor, a typical sample of a 5th grade problem of rigor within the problem solving and the mathematical practices.
You can get a sense for the level of depth and breadth of the evaluation process that's gone through here. And just to put a little bit of math to this, if you look at the number of classrooms that were involved in this, it represents 13 months of evaluation time in classrooms for each of the programs that were looked at. 4 evaluators at each grade level, and an evenly dispersed coverage across all the different schools. And I also can't emphasize enough the value of the K through 12 team that's been a part of not only the curriculum work and also the evaluation work, and the value that's been shared from the upper to lower and lower to upper schools in the process. As you can see, Envisions was the highest rating overall each of the domains was weighted equally on the rubric score, and those that's a weighted average that you're seeing up there. Also, as you look back through those individual domains, you'll note that Envision scored higher in 9 out of 10 of those domains. The only exception to that was the learner outcomes, still in the extensively evident range at 3.3, slightly less than Go Math. We talked about things that we wonder about earlier, and one of the things that we wondered about is as the Go Math program was kind of noted as being a little less rigorous, if given that student assessment and outcomes were part of that domain, if that may have diminished that rating just a little bit. We also sought input from the other 2 key stakeholders in the process. One was students, and this input was done kind of in a focus group dialogue with classroom teachers and their students. I will tell you that kindergarten was not a part of that process, just because that might have been an interesting conversation with kindergarten students. But we asked them about, was the program easy to understand? Did the program provide enough opportunities for practicing a concept so they could gain an understanding of it? And did they like the ability to access the day's lessons online, including textbook practice pages, videos, et cetera? And many of those resources were used in classrooms as well. And you can see that Envisions did pretty well, but the others scored a little bit higher on that. I would say it's important to note here, although students did note Envisions as being a little more difficult to understand, we wonder about the rigor question. Also, if you go back and look at the rubric, you'll also note that the level of student engagement as judged and rated on the rubric by the educators was highest in Envisions, although they were finding it a little more challenging to understand. The last key constituent that we sought feedback from, and I think it was board member Schoenfeld that gave us guidance on this or reminded us about the importance of this, is we got feedback from parents, and we sought feedback. It was wonderful that we heard from over 170 parent respondents in this, asking them questions. Did resources allowed them to help their students? Were those resources available? If you had an opportunity to preview or discuss your student's math work, did it give you a sense of what he or she was doing in math class? And the math work my student brought home was easy to understand. And you can see that in that case, Envisions did well in comparison to the other, although all 3 programs highly rated, which is validation that I think the team did a good job in choosing the finalists. But Envisions finishing in the top in each of those areas. So recommendations from the team is we're seeking the support to move forward to implement Envisions K through 8, excluding Algebra 1 because there's still work to do there, and that's an overlap with the high school. The curriculum work has been done there, but the evaluation piece for Algebra 1 has not been done and would need to be done in concert with high school. And then the next steps would really be to look closely at professional development plans and needs and make sure that product implementation and professional development is married and melded well with the process that our district educators have invested so carefully in to make sure that we're applying the product in a way that makes sense at Merrimack and that promotes higher order thinking and our center-based student-led learning environment. And then the second piece of that would be to procure and then deploy the materials during the summer of 2017 and entering into August Academy in the fall.
So finally, we'd like to thank you for your continued support and invite any questions you have for us.
I bet there are some. Just guessing.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Andy because he's actually waving his hand. And I see we're going to do a round again.
Just because my hand was itching, so I was moving it back
Oh,
and forth.
thank you for the water.
But if it's waving, that's fine. So this is great. The rigor that you used in analyzing was good. I know that I also was real interested in the parental input because probably the one academic program we hear the most about from parents is math. Everyday math took a lot of hits over the last 10 years or even before that. So it was certainly important to be able to get the parental input into it. So I guess I actually have 2 questions. The first one I'll ask is you talked about how Envisions is chosen for the lower, but not for like algebra yet or anything like that. The question is, when you go for a program across the district, do you see a risk in choosing something different at the high school level versus what you do up through middle school? Do you see, is there a benefit to continue with the same program? Does it really matter in terms of whether you continue with the same one, or would you look with a completely different set of eyes to a high school program?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we actually did look at Envisions at the high school. The publishing company hasn't finalized all of their materials for the high school level, so a lot of their online resources, in fact, all of their online resources weren't available. We had a few books. We had some, sort of mock-ups of chapters that were printed almost like ready for publishing kind of thing. So they really just weren't there yet at our level. So that's one of the reasons that we didn't go all in for that at the high school level. If we were to have a program continuous to the district, I think there would be benefit there. However, I don't think that it would necessarily be terrible if we do switch things up at the high school level as well. All of the publishers right now are kind of aligning to similar standards anyway, so the expectations should be similar no matter which program we get to.
Right. And that was sort of my question as to whether it made a difference. And I know there's benefits, but were you looking at it with a completely fresh set of eyes, potentially saying what works best to carry that forward?
I also think it's important to note that Envisions was the only K-12 solution that was out there and looked at.
So my second question.
Can I just address that too?
You can't.
So the other thing that I'd say is that the first part of the program had to do with this committee's development of a curriculum. And that's really important to note because the thing that is going to standardize the experience for students, even if the high school, for a variety of reasons, chooses to go in a different program direction, the curriculum is a K-12 scope and sequence. And so, that's different than what we've had before because the default has been the program and the curriculum are one. That is not the case. We made took great pains to be sure that the three finalists were programs that would be in support, could be in support of our developing curriculum rather than, the tail wag the dog kind of thing. So that's a very big distinction between now and what it had been in the past.
Which is a perfect segue to my second question, and that's around the curriculum part of it, because you talked at a high level the last time you hear about curriculum, and then you went through the process here of how you analyzed, in the rigor and the initial part of the curriculum, and which system supported it. I guess the question is that we know that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all program that works with curriculum, and the curriculum is constantly evolving. We're hearing potential changes, with education standards. We've Common Core or the career and whatever.
College Ready.
College Ready. Thank you. I never remember the acronym. Is being what we're going for today. But we also know that there are parents that want different levels of capabilities, and we also know that there's benefits and things that we've learned as a district over the years. So I guess the question is, what's the go-forward plan in terms of looking at? We haven't talked a lot about curriculum here at the table. You've talked about the analysis and how you got here. So how do you plan on using this program to build the curriculum and to expand it, and more importantly, socialize it and get input from the students and the staff as well as parents on the curriculum itself as you go forward?
Well, I think we'd like to do it very much like our science curriculum has been rolled out. We'd like to roll that out to teachers and then gather input from them, so that we can give them an opportunity to use it throughout a course of a full school year, and then to provide, some feedback to us. So if we need to make some adjustments or some changes, but I think we'd like to, roll that out and then have discussions at the school level.
One of the key pieces is you did input from parents as you went through the analysis of the different programs here, and I think one of the things that I've learned is parents are not shy about sharing their frustration or disagreement with what they see their kids coming home with for homework and programs and things like that. So I think one of the things that I would, as a board member, look for is as you rolled this out and as you did this, the ability to get feedback periodically and regularly from parents as part of this program. I mean, you can't please every parent all the time, but there's a certain path that you try to accommodate. So I would hope that as part of, as you rolled it out, that you get that input, because math, I think, is probably the most visible that we see in terms of that feedback. So, Mark.
So now is as good a time as any to just talk about the reality of curriculum development and program selection and support of curriculum is that there never will be anything that will perfectly match every learner's needs at every point in their K-12 experience. And that's not an excuse. That's not a defense. That's not an example of we didn't look hard enough. That is just reality. And if you've been in the business for 5 minutes, you know that's true. And so what we need to say to everybody is that we recognize, this team recognizes, just as you said, that as brain research continues to populate our thinking, as pedagogical styles change and we learn more from research about what works best for kids, clearly that will result in changes and modifications to a curriculum. So nothing that's presented to the board will ever be presented as, here it is, we finally figured it out, nor will it be presented to the board as, we're not ever going to talk about this again. So I hope that the community recognizes that and honestly has patience with the fact that this is the product of a lot of really good thinking by a lot of really smart people that is going to encourage the feedback from the users, the end users. But I think I just want to kind of put a stake in the ground now that if someone is thinking, well, there's a problem on page 19 and the curriculum, I'm going to tell you right now there is, and that's just a fact. And so, but that doesn't mean that the process isn't really valid, and that the outcome isn't something that we are sure is going to be better for students.
Okay, Naomi, then Michael.
I just wanted to piggyback in on that and say that one of the things that comes to mind while I'm listening is that that's why we have teachers. As in, the curriculum and the programs are both there in order to permit the teachers to do the best possible jobs that they can. And I have certainly seen this already, but I look forward to continuing to see that it is a tool that allows teachers to make those final steps to adapt it within the classrooms as is needed. And so I wanted to pop in also, as far as the student input, which was absolutely marvelous to see there. Andy already talked about the parent one, so I'll leave that there. They approved of all of them. The nuances at the top of the range begin to be something that is less or more helpful when people who are experts in curriculum then choose amongst those. But what I saw is they said any of these we won't find unpalatable. And that's pretty useful information in and of itself. So that's how I would interpret that particular set of data points.
Michael?
Thank you. So I actually had some more questions about the actual pre-thought process of actually giving this to the teachers. I was kind of, and you may have gone over this in the past, but apologize for asking now, but I'm interested in like how long did the teachers have access to the programs prior to actually teaching the students?
So it depended a little bit on which of the programs we were talking about, but they all had access to training with either publisher. We had representation from publishers, and then for each of the sessions, and then in the second session there was a publisher that we weren't able to get everyone training. The majority was. However, our facilitators and administrators were also trained so they could then do a train the trainer. Some of the teachers had access to the programs up to, jump in, up to 2 weeks, I would say. There were the second session, the teachers, when they switched their programs, they had access to it probably about 1 school week. However, during that time, they did training and also spent, on the nights that we did the switching and the feedback sessions, they spent the first part of the time with teachers who had used that same program, and then they had access to sit with a teacher who they were then giving their materials to be able to walk them through some of the things that they had found helpful or had organized or whatnot within that program as well.
Hey, obviously I'm not part of the program, but 2 weeks to me sounds like it's a little tight, and no. I don't know. Did any of the educators feel that they had enough time to prepare in order to, put out a program? Yeah.
And when we talked to the teachers about what they needed, we had time built into their day where after their trainings, they had time to sit with access to either the online support, the actual publisher provided training there, so that they could sit with the trainers and go through the program again or ask questions. They also had time built in to sit with the facilitators who were then also able to help them orientate themselves with all of the components of the program. And that's also part of why we had the teachers sit together to go over parts of the program with the facilitator as well as in those groups, so that when they were looking at particular domains on the rubric, that they didn't score something low because they hadn't explored an area further enough. And so if they didn't have a chance to explore a particular area further, as far as they wanted to, then we asked them to not score that section and to indicate that on the rubric. So when we looked at the scores, we took into account only what the teachers had investigated to the point that they felt comfortable sharing. And I would ask that if any of the facilitators to weigh in that were there with the teachers, in the trenches, what their feedback was.
Yes, at my school at TFS, I spent a lot of time with the teachers as they were teaching the units, planning. As education is, and at the elementary level, we're planning all week. And so I would sit with them, talk through lessons, help them prepare for them, reflect on the math lesson from the day before. And that was very helpful when you were in there actually instructing the kids to have that discussion together and work through it together. I observed some of the teachers while they were teaching it. So I was able to give feedback and have that professional dialogue in that sense was helpful.
One of the things that was pointed out to me a long time ago, and this is really what action research is. Someone said you don't teach a person to drive by sitting in the car while it's parked. So at a certain point, you have to get into drive and to use it, and then in the process of using it, the questions, the challenges, the benefits, the weaknesses, whatever, reveal themselves in action. And then in action is when the questions can get developed. And we were very lucky because we had, in one case, we had a consultant who was, I think Michelle just mentioned that, but available to us every Friday throughout the entire run, so that if anybody needed him, in the actual doing of it, then he was available for that purpose, and not just him. So I think proved to be sufficient for the needs of teachers getting up and running, and then able to do their action research.
I can understand that analogy. It's to me, we have children that we're teaching that are learning in the same process, and when you have someone learning and children learning, I think it's a little bit different because I'm in a sales role. I took over a new job, and even when I was trying to learn, there was someone there right next to me actually that knew it in case, like with me. So that I won't go into that, but to me, I think personally, 2 weeks is a very short time period to learn something new as you're also teaching and doing everything else. So maybe in the future, just my input, but you can take it from the teachers if that's a long enough time. As a follow-up question, just obviously there's a disruption when you're changing from one teaching to another. How did that go with the students and the teachers? And was it well received? Did it seem fairly seamless as you were injecting 3 different types of teachings throughout the year?
At the upper, the teachers would pick a topic. So, for example, if they were going to evaluate a program, they would pick volume. And they would look at the program in terms of volume, know how to access it online, would try it out so that they could find all the materials that they needed. They had their teacher's editions. Where could they find the assessments? We had books with sticky notes and flags, and so that they knew the routine. And then they taught the whole unit of volume from the beginning to the end. Then we talked about what was the assessments like, and many of the teachers that they would go to Marcia at that time, and they were thrilled at the results that they found, and so weren't the students, because the students were seeing success for themselves because they were doing one topic at a time and going through that piece. So the students would come to the computer lab, use materials online, as well as using the materials in the classroom. But it was for one topic. And that, I think, was the key. And so then after that period of time, then the teacher would perhaps switch to a different program. So when they'd switch to a different program, it was a whole different topic. So the volume was covered, all the standards of it, the assessments, the formatives, it was all there. And then they would go to a different topic. So it wasn't like I'm teaching half of this topic here and then this half a topic, and what did I hit here and what did I miss there? No, it was set up in that point so that if next in line volume was your topic to teach to your students, that's what you would do that topic within this program.
Yeah, that sounds very well thought out. Thank you very much for helping me understand that.
We did the same thing at the middle school, and the other piece, that's why, as Michelle mentioned, some of the teachers worked with it maybe 4 weeks, others worked with it with a little bit longer. It's because, they wanted to finish the topic before they moved on to either the next round or another topic itself.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I still have a couple more questions here. Looking at the charts, just to, if I recall this correctly, so each educator had the opportunity to do 2 out of the 3. Is that were there any statistical normalities within the reports that the educators possibly provided, saying that, like, I'm just trying to think of a situation where maybe one teacher was a little harsher in their grading on 2 of the actual programs, and therefore it might have led to 2 of the programs actually going down, but the 3rd one actually staying up.
We did ask the teachers to work with their facilitators so that they, were talking with a consistent person. So that facilitator would have worked with, all of the teachers in that building. And I think that ability to have that discussion was something that really helped them to be able to, think out what the rubric was asking them and what the program had for them to see. And I think that would help them to maybe not be so judgmental on one or the other. And facilitators...
I'm just actually saying that they might have been judgmental on both.
Yes.
And so, like, you might have someone that actually scored 2, and then everybody else scored around 3. And if you did see that, you should have possibly taken that one out. I'm not sure if you saw that or...
One of the things early in our early planning, we were thinking the exact same thing, and having used rubrics in our classrooms for years, we know that it's very important that you sit with more than one scorer at times to do exactly that, to make sure you're scoring on an equally. And so that was one of the things that we did, was to have the facilitators sit with all the people in the building, so they could have 4 to 6 educators that they would sit with to go through and say, well, what did you find to show me that, to tell me exactly what, so they could help. The other thing we did is on the sessions where we met with all of the educators, we had anyone using a particular program go through the rubric as a group and talk about each of the components, and then said to the teachers, if you need to go back and relook at your rubric, because we had asked them to come to those sessions with the rubric completed. If you now need to go back and rethink anything you've done on your rubric, now would be the time to do it. So we tried to, as much as we could, based on our experiences using rubrics, take that into consideration.
No, thank you. I just, obviously, looking at the numbers, I was worried that maybe someone was. And then my final question, just have you looked at the financial impact of the program that you're choosing, and does it fit into the budgetary numbers that I think we went over during budget season?
So I have been meeting, and as recently as today, with the rep from Pearson Publishing, and there's always the negotiation, and so we're in the middle of that now. But I'm confident that we're in a ballpark that we're going to make work.
Yeah. And just lastly, thank you all for the hard work in reviewing all these programs, and thank you to the educators that have done it. So, thank you.
Naomi?
Two ideas or takeaways that occur to me while I listen to my colleagues here. The first one is parents that got mentioned again, and I do think that it's important to reemphasize moving forward to continue the marvelous work of already communicating with parents on it. I think that often the problem is that parents feel that their input is not valued when it comes to math, that it's treated as whether or not they're having a hard time or an easy time with their child, when what they're saying actually says a lot about the quality of what's being sent home. And so I think it would be important to keep that in mind as you continue to build this. And the other is a question and comment, and that is, do you feel that it would have made a difference if teachers had the curriculum longer, or do you feel that it gave them a good representative amount of time?
That's an opinion kind of question.
Yeah.
I would say from dialogue with teachers that most of those that I spoke with really felt that it gave them a good sense of the capabilities of the program. I also think the other point that shouldn't be lost in this is recognizing that our teachers today are working with college and career readiness standards. They're using the current tool that's at their disposal along with a lot of others. So they're pretty adept at this process already. And so that speaks partly to the learning curve, but also to their ability to kind of get down to the brass tacks and understand what works and what is best for students.
One possible thought moving forward, again, depending on things when it comes to science and other curriculum, is to build that in and ask them if they feel that they've adequately addressed it. And then when that question comes up in future, then it'll have a ready answer.
Andy?
So one question, I know during your discussion about training and preparation and stuff, you mentioned something about materials that the publisher provided. So as we roll out this capability, the program with Pearson to be able to support the curriculum, is there an expense or a need for the publisher to do formal district-wide training as appropriate as part of this program, or is it something that we're going to self-do within the district?
Part of the negotiation is exactly that, and but where I am confident, after today, even more confident, that because of the size of the commitment, that we're going to have, as part of the package, the number of consultants that we're going to need for August Academy. So I'm very confident that that's what we're going to be able to have.
Okay. Now it's my turn. So I have been through, obviously the Everyday Math program with my kids, and there's some definitely unique styles to it. And I guess the question, I have a ton of questions, I'm not going to lie to you, but what's the transition of the methodology from the old program to the new one for students? When you think of things as unique as like lattice, now it may not be part of this new program. How are kids that have learned lattice going to kind of transition to the new skill set to solve problems with math?
Well, through our current process of teaching students, lattice is one method of many.
Right.
But as we bring children, for example, to the upper elementary school, our emphasis with fifth grade is the traditional algorithm for multiplication. In sixth grade, it's the traditional algorithm for division. So we bring children, even though we teach them many ways early on to learn how to work out a problem, we bring them to that traditional method, which I think then naturally flows right into some of the higher level work and work that we do at the middle school and then high school level.
Gotcha. And I know that the teachers scored very well, and the evaluators scored very well on parent feedback. So the parent feedback that you gathered and they gathered for you showed a very high confidence or comfort level for parents with what was being sent home with their kids. But the teachers were more critical. I noticed that a lot of the parent resource scores were all below 3, actually. So saying that your eyes saw a need for improvement, knowing how our parents do like to engage and support their children at home. So is there opportunity to do maybe, I know we used to have parent nights at the lower levels to introduce parents to how math is being taught and even additional materials that came with that night that we used to better understand how our kids were learning so that we didn't, I wouldn't say get in the way, it's the wrong term, but negate what they learned in the classroom as we're understanding what they're learning at home. So if there's the opportunity for that, I'm not saying, are you doing it? I'm saying it's something that I would think would be a great idea. And obviously you have to wait to deliver the new curriculum before you can even engage in that kind of thing. So more of a comment. And in our standardized testing over the years, the one area that in math that we saw an opportunity for improvement was inquiry. And I'm hearing in some of your evaluation that inquiry was really a strong benefit for this Envision program. So is the goal to measure basically where inquiry may be improving? I know we have a different measure from NECAP to now Smarter Balanced, but will we be looking at how inquiry is impacted over a period of time based on the new delivery of curriculum? I'm kind of putting on you, Mark, because you're the your curriculum guy.
My colleagues know so much, so I don't want to step on their toes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you're right, we have a new measure, but I would point out that this measure, Smarter Balance measure, more aptly measures inquiry than the previous measure did. And the college and career ready standards have set I think a high bar for that marriage between knowing and understanding that we've talked so much about. And that intersection of knowing and understanding is where inquiry is. And so yes, I hope that over time we'll be able to demonstrate ways in which, in addition to, if you think about the presentations that each of the buildings provided over the last 6 weeks, the entire culture of the schools in and of itself is really inquiry-based, and the principals and the teachers are all creating those cultures, and so it will be partly a function of the math program and the math curriculum that guides the program as far as how much inquiry is employed, and it's also the emerging culture of our schools that will do that as well.
Gotcha. And my final question, well, 2 more questions, sorry. I'm not going to hold myself back. This is a big one. But as we supplemented everyday math in prior years because it didn't have the automaticity function that we felt our students also needed to have, do you see Envision being something supplemented with what you're already doing in the classroom? It's a backbone, but not the entire delivery of the math curriculum?
I think with whatever math program we use, we want to make sure that students have strong fact fluency skills. And I think we've adopted through the last several years that additional time every day in the classroom dedicated to fact fluency. And that is just critical for success. And I don't see us ever letting go of that, even with the work that we do in a program. I think we've seen such success with students that we will continue to emphasize that along with all of the activities that are embedded in a program.
Excellent. And go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you went.
To build off of that, too, what Marcia was saying earlier, as we have been working and writing the curriculum K through 2, it's not memorizing basic math facts, but building the conceptual understanding in number sense. So within that curriculum, we have added examples using 10 frames, doubles facts, and how you build that number sense within young children to then that's the only way that they're going to eventually memorize their facts, is if they have that embedded within at the younger grades. So that's inside our curriculum, so that's why the two pieces will go together along with teachers' best practices. So it's kind of like, you know, all three of those will go together to have effective instruction.
Excellent. That's
And can I just
please
just add to that? So back to what we were saying before. So I think it's just important to say this tonight. So if any, taxpayer would hear in the next 2 or 3 years, like, gosh, we funded this program, and now I hear they're introducing X. Gosh, that program must not have included everything it needed to include. That I'm going to suggest now, as I would have suggested with any program that we would have chosen, that the likelihood that that will happen is great, because we've said for years that there is no animal out there that we could purchase, no such animal, that will have every component that we need. That just doesn't exist. So I think that, to the point that was made earlier about trying to empower our teachers, we have an excellent program that has as much as is out there to support student learning, contemporary student learning, the intersection of knowing and understanding in math, and all of those things. And as we get to know our students better, as our curriculum gets rolled out, as we get data back and so on, there likely will be findings that say, oh, this particular tool might really be good here. And the experience and the excellence of our teachers would dictate that we would entertain what they're telling us their need is, rather than to say, nope, we've got the program, that's it, deal with it, because that's not what we should be doing for our learner. So, I'm just trying to get it all out there ahead of time, so that if people say later, well, I hear that this, so that, expect that would be the case. But to the extent that that happens, it doesn't mean that the selection was a failure, because it would just mean that if we had selected one other thing of the three, then the only difference would be we might have had to supplement with something different for this than we would with this. But supplementing is probably the name of the game going forward.
Got 2 more questions. I'll throw it back. Oh, sure, absolutely.
And I just want to say I hope that actually does happen, because evolution is obviously key. I mean, who would have thought that a online retailer would have bought a grocery chain? So, tying it right back to that. So, thanks.
Your mango's dropped off by a drone soon. Couple more questions. One is Title I Math. Were they engaged in the evaluation process as well?
Title I was involved in the evaluation process, primarily just looking at it from an intervention perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Also sought input from special education teachers, as well as intervention components of the programs were available to look at.
Excellent. And then my final question was neighboring districts. Are any of them using Envision? Did you receive any type of, feedback from those who use every day?
I don't have that chart, but yes.
But yes.
We did
Okay.
look at that.
I think there's.
We have Hampstead, Timberlane. We're trying to remember your chart.
Yes, that's what
Hampstead, Timberlane, Salem, Wyndham.
So,
Over
but
by
basically people that
Exeter.
would be in the South Central District as well, and so you'd have some collaboration as we do with our neighboring districts, just as we're getting comfortable with it, what they've done in their classrooms with the materials. So that's excellent. So what I would say is a kind of a closing thought is, I know that it was a tight schedule. I know there was a very intense process, but I think that if it was a frustrating curriculum to deliver, you wouldn't have gotten great scores in your evaluations. So that gave me some comfort. I know Michael had those concerns, and that's the one thing I'm looking at, a lot of 3s and 3s and above. So it tells me that as they're delivering curriculum, that they hadn't delivered before, that they feel it has the tools that'll let them accomplish their goals. So I know it was a tight way to deliver it, but I think overall, I think it gave them an idea to have a strong opinion on it, and it was a positive. So, I wish the district luck rolling out Envision. I won't be rolling it out for you because it's not what we do here. But we do, wish you luck. We know it's a big project. We thank you for the work you did. It was not 6 months. It was by the time we decided to budget, I think it was probably being considered for a number of years already. But we're not going to, knee-jerk a reaction. We're going to take time. We're going to evaluate. We're going to use data. That's so important to us as a board, knowing how you're using data to drive good decisions, and that makes our investment that much sounder. So we know that doesn't come with no effort. There's a lot of effort and a lot of thought. The data you provide tonight really shows the extent in which you gave a critical eye to all the programs, and I think you've done yeoman's work, and I think we have a good program ahead of us. So congratulations on your hard work. I think it will definitely prove to pay great dividends for this district. Mark?
Just one last thing.
Of course.
So we have two members of our team who are leaving us. One of them is Emily McElwain, and the other, as we said earlier, is Nick Kohler. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank them both. I'm sure that Marcia and everybody else would agree that without Emily and Nick's participation, we really wouldn't be as far ahead as we are. And I would also point out that they both have, their eyes are looking forward. So Nick in Massachusetts, Emily in Georgia, and yet for every time in these last couple of weeks that we needed them, they're there. They're there as if they're going to be here for the next 25 years. And I can't let them go without thanking them for that commitment, because this is legacy work, and they're not going to, unfortunately, be beneficiaries of the work that they did, but we will be. So I just want to thank you both very much for everything that you did for our district. Good.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much. Very big night tonight. Lots of stuff. We're only on item number 7, but the rest of it's housekeeping. So, and we're on to item number 7, which is the review of the comprehensive level delivery of curriculum at Merrimack High School for the first year.
I have to tell you, what wonderful presentations tonight, and to come last after all of those is a bit of a trick. The only, yeah, I've got it here, I think. The only moment of trepidation I felt, Andy, I don't know if you felt the same thing, is when Mrs. Fitzgerald talked about the can of tennis balls at $2.98, and the parents had a coupon and a fixed budget, and I was already starting to sweat. Please don't turn around and ask me the question, how many could they purchase?
You're going to give Mr. Delude your shopping list and coupons now, aren't you?
Exactly. Well, anyway, I get a chance to speak to Comprehensive tonight, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to do so. Obviously, without question, the introduction of the comprehensive level across the curriculum for the incoming 8th grade marked a significant, if not a huge, cultural change for students entering Merrimack High School. By no means diminishing the excellent work that has been done over the years and continues to be done by those who are teaching students and instructing students at the standard level. Many incoming students were exposed to a level of academic rigor that they were unaccustomed to. Initially, to be honest, some incoming students resisted this level of rigor, some by acting out, some resisted passively. I would say most accepted the challenge, and others recognized the need for assistance above and beyond what they were getting in the classroom and sought help through our various skill centers. I know that in your packets I gave you a full comprehensive report, and as I referenced that last piece, I think it's a neat thing to point out. If you go to one of the pages, and it talks about the data we collected about the number of kids who visited the Skills Center. And again, we took the data up until the end of May, and when you consider that as we go into June, kids are preparing for final examinations, they only access those centers that much more. But I thought it was interesting that 629 student visits to the academic skills centers. Kids went for access for additional support in English and social studies. There were 1,167 students who sought additional support in math and science. So closing in on almost 2,000 visits for additional skills support. So I thought that was a pretty powerful thing. And we noticed that statistically, that number grew over the course of the year as the kids became more and more comfortable accessing those skill centers. But I'm mindful that this is only 1 year's worth of data, and that's why I was speaking tonight in more general terms. So I'd like, at least for the sake of the audience, to read the conclusion of the report at the comprehensive level. So during the 2016-2017 school year, Merrimack High School implemented a change from what was a homogeneous ability grouping structure to heterogeneous comprehensive class structure. And I think it's really important to point out that that was for 80% of the incoming 9th grade. And I think that's an important stat when you consider that prior to that, approximately 30+% kids were in the standard level and or the what we call foundations level. So that was a pretty significant leap. And I know those of you, as I mentioned last June, actually it was, all of the data points to the fact that heterogeneous was the way to go as opposed to homogeneous. The benefits, short term anyway, from the comprehensive class model at MHS were that struggling learners had access to a rigorous curriculum, a rich classroom discussion, and strong peer models. I think that was one of the biggest factors that certainly we noticed right from the get-go. Instead of a parallel system of special education supports, all learners were able to access learning support from the special education partners and general education teachers in each of the classrooms. Instead of the stigma of being assigned to special education support center, again, all learners had equal access to academic skill centers. And we also found that going to this model, which was along the lines of RTI, intervention was far more proactive, where students were able to remediate competencies and redo tests, as well as realign challenging material. So if you look at the big picture, it was, at least in 1 year's worth of implementation, a positive. As we move forward to next year, for those same students, and now we're talking about the students who are going to go from 9th grade to 10th, what we're hoping for as they move into their sophomore year is, I would call a natural level of maturity from those students. And one thing we really do push for is an increasing ability of those kids to self-advocate as opposed to having, you know, parents or teachers refer them. We want those kids to self-advocate. And I think part of that you can see, if I could give you some type of progression, when in the second half of the year, more and more of those kids said, I need help, and chose to go on their own volition to those centers as opposed to being referred. And big picture, too, we really want these kids to start taking ownership of their own education as opposed to, again, relying on others to make decisions for them. For the educators, one thing that we've learned as we go forward from this year's experience is that they do need additional time for collaboration. We do have collaboration days, but realistically they need additional time for collaboration across the curriculum so they can talk about what worked well for you, you know, perhaps what did not work well, and just be honest about that. We also want to improve the communication with the skills centers. Obviously, while they were utilized, we just want to make sure there's a smoother transition from the classroom to the skills center. We want to see more and more educators get familiar with the new model, because remember, the implementation only affected a relatively small number of teachers who were teaching grade 9. This is a rollout that's going to take place over 4 years. So next year it's going to be for you know, freshmen and sophomores. The following year, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and then ultimately freshmen, sophomores, and seniors. And with all the other things that we put in place, not just Evening Academy, which has been there, but the Summer Institute, our goal is that the kids who graduate in 2020 and who are behind me on the dais or alongside of us on the dais are there because they've earned the diploma. They're not simply reaching for the lowest rung of the ladder and attempting to walk. They have earned their diploma, and there are many, many opportunities over their 4 years to do so. And of course, along with the collaboration, the other thing we're looking for from the teachers is continued differentiation of instruction for all learners. So that's essentially, in general terms, what we've learned from the comprehensive model. Again, it's based on 1 year's data. I think you really have to have 3 years of data to really to see how effective it's been. But certainly, as I mentioned last June, if you look historically, if you look at research across the country and actually internationally, the heterogeneous model is the way to go. So when I presented before, I think we've done exceptional work. I credit the teachers, kids, and parents for where we've achieved in our AP and honors programs. Our focus, obviously, with comprehensive was to raise those kids in the middle and those kids who were struggling and infuse them with more academic rigor. Another thing I think we're going to have to look at this summer and into next year is then increasing the rigor at the foundations level as well. So at that, I know you've had a chance, or hope you've had a chance to review the data. Some of the things that we saw we did anticipate. I mentioned to you that we did have a number of kids who really struggled in science in the middle school. Some kids failed in both their 7th and 8th grade years. We actually thought, given the nature of physical science in their freshman year, that there might be a higher failure rate, but the reality is it was only marginal. So we were actually pleased with that, and I think you see in the other disciplines, the success rate actually went up in virtually every other discipline. So again, 1 year's data, so I don't get too excited about it, but I have to be pleased with what I've seen.
Naomi? And then Andy.
Thank you. I first learned about this and began to hear about the change right after it occurred when I first stepped onto the board, so it's especially nice to see it coming back now, to see the pieces happening. There are two things that occur to me that I'm curious about. The first one is, in the data points in the packet, when you're comparing the failure rates across the two, was it failure at the 2015-2016 curricular level for each student?
Yes.
So it's actually a bit more impressive than it looks, because there are students who were not passing at what was a less rigorous curriculum, and I know more are passing at a more rigorous.
Right, that's exactly, and I'm glad you picked up on that, because I didn't blatantly say that, but that was one of the things you'd pick up from what we have here.
Now, the question that came to mind for me is, it has in here a mention of 5% of students in a foundations curriculum to meet their needs currently. One of the things that can happen as a school moves to a comprehensive heterogeneous model is that students who are not within that model can find themselves increasingly isolated because there are fewer of them. So I was wondering if you had noticed anything of that sort, or if you had taken steps in that regard, what you saw.
Honestly, I think one of the things we did notice in the foundations area is that our classes were a bit too large. And I don't think, in retrospect, that we did a good job in reducing the size of those foundations. But I think, Naomi, it's important to know that embedded in each level are the skills necessary to make it to the next level. So embedded in foundations are skills that would allow them to move to the comprehensive level. Embedded in comprehensive are skills that would allow them to move to the honors level. So I think one of the things, and I did mention that in my introduction, I think we really have to take a serious look at is what we've been doing in the foundations level. Yep.
Andy? And Michael, do you have your hand up? If you're scratching, there's a pen involved. I didn't
rubbing. So one of the things to me that's encouraging about this is that the students are reaching out for support through the learning support opportunities, because one of the frustrations is that kids go, traditionally, if you look back, somebody that hasn't understood material will not seek out help necessarily. When they go to homework at night, the parents are struggling to help them. So going for support during the school day or even afterwards is really encouraging, because it's a behavior that I think is important that students pick up more and more. And it sounds like the change in to comprehensive has sort of forced it a bit based on what it was before. So my question is, how were you perceiving the ability to serve the number of students that came looking for that support? And as you roll this out into the other grades, do you see the need for additional support or resources to be able to meet the needs?
Well, we do have a plan. You know, we do have a plan for the next year. There's one thing that I heard that I found a bit disturbing. We had talked about the fact that perhaps the center would not be open all periods. And I said, well, it has to be. So we're going to have to find a way because there has to be equal access. In other words, if let's say we only had the center open for additional skills periods 2, 4, 5, and 6. Well, kids period 1 are going to need access. Kids period 3 are going to need access, 7, 8. So what we're going to do this summer is devise a plan so that there can be equal access into the skill center, because what we did find was just in this one grade level, more and more kids, especially as we got to the second semester, were choosing to access. Well, now you're moving into a whole new freshman class plus a sophomore class. So there's no question, and honestly, our resources are going to be tapped, but we are putting plans in place to be proactive.
Right. And the reason I'm saying this is because as we've said countless times tonight, we're data-driven up here from the board level and administration, is to make sure that as you go through and you look at this data, I mean, you now have about a year's worth of data, and then by the time you get to budgeting, you'll have some data into the beginning of the year where you're getting multiples. It would be good to articulate places that you need additional resources to make this happen. I know we talk about special ed and paraeducators and support and things like that. I think, to me, while I think it's important for special eds, a kid that have IEPs and things, if we're using those resources more broadly to all of the student population, or a much larger part of it, that if you find out that you're falling short and you need additional, to me that's money well spent, because it's helping to really round out the education of the students. So that's why I'd look for, that would be a question I will ask you when you come to the budgeting, is what additionally do you need to be able to support these learning centers to keep them open all day so that kids, regardless of when their open periods are, have the ability to go?
You know, it's an interesting point you make. Initially, when we rolled everything out last year, we were really tossing a lot of things out there for the public to digest, and I think a lot of people were balking because there was such significant change. But an indication of what you're talking about is even being witnessed now in the Summer Institute. Last year, I think we had about 35 to 38 kids in the Summer Institute. I think that number is already doubling. So clearly the community is buying into what we were proposing a year ago. I perfectly understand that with any rollout, I've never said I couldn't do a better job. You know, ultimately when I retire, I'll look over and say, I know I could have done a better job at this and that. That's all about continuous improvement. But I do get that sense that more and more people are buying into what we're offering, whether it's in the Summer Institute or through the comprehensive program.
Michael?
First, I'd just like to congratulate you and the entire district on another graduating class. I'm sorry I couldn't be there on Saturday. I was busy with my son's soccer game, so just congratulations to everybody, all the way from the kindergarten teacher all the way up to, obviously, all the high school teachers. I have quite a few questions, I think. One, in regards to the student transition and the additional credit that they receive, yep. There have been statements that have been made that when colleges look at this additional credit, that it may not be looked upon as a benefit for a child going to a college. This is just what I've heard, and by no means do I think that, but I was wondering if you could clarify that and understand what colleges look at when they see that credit.
I would immediately say I wouldn't buy that for a second. I think colleges would look at the fact that this kid was self-motivated enough to actually go, what is this, virtually year-round school. And I think when they see what we're offering, I don't think we're going to be the last school in the state to offer this. I think, having talked to my colleagues, we get together monthly. So when I talk to mostly my colleagues from southern New Hampshire, they say, how are you doing this? Where did this come from? And I point out the fact that, one, this is bubbled up, we believe, from need, but also we have great support. We have great support in the central office and the school board level. And I wouldn't give them by name or name them by school, but they say we don't have that kind of support. So I think anybody who is a true recruit is going to look at that and say, these kids were self-motivated enough to do that during the course of the summer? Yeah, I don't buy that for a second. So I think that's a positive. I have obviously just gone through the system myself, having my kids go to school. In no way, shape, or form do I think this would reflect negatively on kids. I think it would only reflect positively on kids.
I appreciate you making that statement. I want a clarification so that it was out there in the public.
So at the risk of beating a horse that's already dead, I would Ken said it well, but the one of the big things that's changed, I think, in the way that we're trying to approach grading and assessment is as much about process as it is about outcome. And so if a student is having some academic challenges, that's to be expected. Any one of us, any valedictorian going to Stanford is going to have some academic challenges of some sort. So the question isn't will those exist, the question is they will. The real question, or the fact is they will, the real question, as Ken said, is what skill set have you been able to demonstrate that will help you to overcome whatever challenge you identify as yours. And colleges are increasingly interested in those qualities of students that can say, this is where I'm not strong, this is where I need help. And because colleges spend an awful lot of time, in some cases, doing remediation, and a lot of the remediation has to, part of the remediation process starts with the college having to identify the need of the student. And sometimes if the student can come and say, here's what I'm telling you I need right now, that is just I don't know if it's too strong a word to say, but a burden off a college and a freshman cluster of teachers and counselors to have to kind of figure it out, because I'm coming to you with those skills to say what I need. So to Ken's point, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest, and Deb Barker, I think, would affirm that from the guidance perspective, that that's actually a quality that's more looked at positively for students than ever before, and not just whether you get 100 on all your quizzes and tests.
And also, I think the model we're proposing that some of my colleagues are intrigued in, we've talked about the idea of including enrichment. And so that's another thing. I don't think anybody who sees when we offer an enrichment course in the summer is going to say, well, I don't see any value in that. Again, I think they see real value in kids taking a course in enrichment in the summer.
Yeah, my thought was exactly in line with what your statements have both been. I just wanted to kind of put it out there for the public to also hear that.
Thank you.
So I was intrigued by the data, and I think that I will continue to look to see the year-over-year differences, and also obviously one class to another obviously can also be a little bit different based off the mix of the students. So I appreciate that. I also want to say that one of the things that I think the comprehensive does, which you kind of went over last year, was that you're teaching up. You're not teaching down, right, which pulls people up versus trying to teach to something that helps everybody. You're trying to get everybody up, and I think that the resource part is huge. That self-advocation, everything. One of the things that Andy did bring up is regarding just understanding the additional resources that might be needed. One of the things that I would like to know is if there's an impact elsewhere. Is it freeing up the teacher's time because they don't have to, do that after school stuff and actually be able to help them to, think of better ways to teach. So as you're thinking, no answer tonight, but just kind of think about, it's not always just about what we're doing for additional resources. It actually might be where that impact is that actually is giving us just more access to the teacher's time so that they can continue to move forward and teach themselves. Also, I'm not sure, since I'll have a high school student next year, but the communication to the parents about those resources, the skill center I think is huge. And is there a way that you're currently communicating regarding the resource center, and also maybe putting out there in Power School saying, hey, here's a question to ask your student, and saying, hey, here's the skill center. Did you know about this and this resource that's available to your students? So, but I think this is a great start for the first year.
I think we can only do better. So I think that's a great suggestion, and I'll talk about getting it out there as soon as we can.
Great.
It's a great idea.
But thank you very much.
No, thank you.
And I had a couple questions, not too many. Obviously, I lived it, so having a freshman, and I'll have a sophomore next year and a freshman, so we were really piloting this together from two sides of the table. I guess the question is, based on what, every first-year model of a car gets adjustments because of what they learned when it rolled out to the market. What adjustments and refinements do you see in the way you do the curriculum next year? And I kind of want to play off one of Andy's comments earlier about how kids with IEPs having the resources and having the resources available to all students, I think also helps kids with IEPs in the way that it's inclusive. It doesn't point one out versus the other. I think that's something I know has been a positive takeaway, that all kids are getting that kind of support, skill readiness for the high school classroom. So I wanted to give a comment on that, a positive. But what refinements are you seeing in year 2, knowing that year 1 had a lot of learning?
I think one of the things, actually, I'll be honest with you. When we first met in those first 2 months, I thought we were almost doing too much collaboration, and I thought our teachers were getting exhausted. They were meeting every week, and they were doing a review of the comprehensive model. And I thought, my goodness, I think we're taxing them too much. I think they need a chance to breathe. And so I intervened, I think in October. I said, I think we need to back off a little bit on that so that we can get some perspective and not be all consumed by this. Well, I listened to kids' voices, I listened to teachers' voices, and by the time January rolled around, the teachers were saying, I think we need more time to collaborate, Ken. I think you were right. I think we were all consumed in the first couple of months, but I think what we could use is some more time to collaborate during the day or after school to find out what's working here, what's not working there. So I think that's one of the refinements that we would want to put in place next year, to build a regular system of collaboration amongst the teachers across the discipline. So that was one. We wanted to improve the relationship between the skills center and the classroom teacher, because there were sometimes, let's say in a study hall, right, a teacher could get 5 calls. I was like, the phone's ringing 5 times. Is Joe there? Is Sue there? Is Jack there? Is Jane there? Is Betty there? And that's because some of the kids who were either scheduled to go to the skills center or volunteered to go to the skills center forgot. So we thought, how can we improve that communication so that they're not there in the study hall when they could be getting direct instruction in the skills center? So we're trying to refine that method, better communication between the two, because it's been very, very valuable. I do think that there are going to be teachers in the sophomore year who are going to be new to this model, but they have collaborated with the teachers who've been teaching it at grade 9. And I think it's become more accepted. So that type of conversation is going to have to continue over the next 3 or 4 years, and still continue to impress upon the classroom teacher and the people in the skills center the differentiated instruction, just to emphasize all those points, because I never want it to be, and I don't think it is, so I don't want to misrepresent, Joe may not be doing well in this class. Well, the skills center has the answer. No. We want, the classroom teacher to have the answer, and vice versa. Where the skills, well, the teacher should be doing this. No, just improve that communication. Where does Joe or Jane or whomever need some additional help? How can we reach this kid on their level or a different level? So I think those are the things we need to work on.
Excellent. Are there any other questions from the board? Michael.
Just go back to the resources,
Sure.
And additional resources. So, do you use any of the students currently that are maybe in 12th grade or anything like that in the resource room?
No, and that's a very good point, Mike. And I'm glad you're raising some really good points tonight. No, I can remember as a kid I was a peer tutor, so. Thank you, because you've raised another good point.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, if you know a student that wants to go into teaching or anything like that, that's just definitely another thing that they can put on their resume for college too, which I think would be helpful.
Well, we used to have, peer mediation, and that kind of went by the by. It was almost a trendy thing, but I don't think a peer tutor is ever trendy. I think it's a good idea that we probably overlooked. So I think there are kids who are very, very capable. Let's face it, I think you know that a lot of kids teach kids anyway. But I think that would be a great addition. And I think might be, I could introduce it, I could make it credit bearing. You know, I know when I was a youngster, it was a credit bearing opportunity for me. So I'm taking good notes here. You know, if you have additional suggestions, be more than happy to hear them. So thanks.
Naomi?
Just a stray thought building on that, I think that as the years go by, so to speak, and you have students at upper level classes who've been through this model themselves, they'll become an even richer source, perhaps, of peer tutoring possibilities.
Thanks.
Andy?
Back in our era, I was a tutor teaching slide rule, but I don't think that's a skill set that's needed anymore. So.
Not the slide rule, no. So, I was a peer tutor in Spanish. That's hard to believe.
Muy bien.
Bueno.
So on that note, I think that you know, this is the first year of a rollout of a very different idea. You know, thank you for having, you know, the parent preparation night for 8th grade parents. I think it was even largely, you know, it was attended largely last year, but I think it was even bigger this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, as parents are engaging, you know, we are definitely eager. I can say as a parent of an 8th, 9th, and 10th grader starting in September, we are eager to learn more about how and we can navigate from an appropriate distance. So I think that's a challenge for a lot of parents. I think I talked to Naomi. She's, as a college professor, will get calls from parents. So some don't let go. I'm willing to try.
I don't think I've heard it quite put that way, but I like the way you put it. Navigate from an appropriate distance. I guess that's a good message to all.
So, but that's, you know, something as you're communicating to parents, and I think not just at those nights, but throughout, you know, how to teach your kid to advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to help as well with their confidence in their goals, you know, in the classroom. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I definitely think that we're only going up from here. So,
Good. Thank you.
So thank you.
No, thank you very much. Nice night. Enjoy.
Have a good night, Ken.
Well, I know that Mr. Hamilton wasn't at the graduation this year, but it was. I will say, since you did bring it up, I thought the kids presented very well. They were exceptionally respectful, and I thought the audience was great too. We numbered about 3,500, we think, this year. So it was a great event. Thanks. It was a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on to the housekeeping. So item number 8 is the approval of the June 5th, 2017 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Made by Michael, seconded by Naomi. Are there any adjustments to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll put the motion to a vote. I'll give you one last chance. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. And abstentions? Andy is abstaining. So the motion carries 3-0-1. Well, I thought you'd watch it on TV and just hang on to every word, Andy. Gosh. Take our fun. And so on item number 9, which is the acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000 with Matt. You have a few to share. Thank you.
Yes, I do. I have 3 for you this evening tonight. The first is to James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School. Name of the donor is Barbara Wolf of Merrimack, New Hampshire. The amount of the gift is $250. Mrs. Wolf wants to sponsor or has sponsored Mrs. Robinson's grade 5 class for the American Independence Museum in Exeter, New Hampshire. She paid the cost of attendance for all the kids who are going for that, so we thank her very much for her generous donation. The next one is to the Merrimack School District from Wentworth Place Association, 46 Coventry Court, Merrimack, New Hampshire, in the amount of $285. This is to provide funds for homeless student expenses not covered by Title I. This money will go to our homeless liaison, Jody Hanley, who will oversee the disbursement of those funds. And we thank Wentworth Place for their very generous, kind, and caring donation. Lastly, we have the Lions Club of Merrimack in the amount of $1,000 to purchase technology for students to provide universal design, universal access for all technology with students with disabilities. So that's $1,000 from the Lions Club of Merrimack.
Do you have a motion? Michael?
I move that we accept the generous donations by Barbara Wolf, Wentworth Place Association, and Lions Club with our gratitude.
Is there a second? Seconded by Andy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 4-0-0. On to the next item, which is the consent agenda with Mark.
So on consent tonight, we have one educator resignation. That's Lindsay Bates, social studies teacher at Merrimack High School. And we have the following educator and administrator nominations. For educator nominations, Stephanie Sakella, part-time oral language at Merrimack Middle School, Nicholas Seymour, social studies teacher at Merrimack High School, and Michaela Wochus, grade 2 teacher at Thorntons Ferry School. And in addition, under administrator nomination, we have Alicia Hansen-Prue, assistant principal at Mastercola Elementary School.
Do we have a motion? Andy?
I move we accept the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second? Seconded by, we'll give it to Michael. Just a hair ahead. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 4-0-0. On to item number 11, other. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Seeing none, are the comments? Michael?
I didn't get a chance to say this before when we were talking about the integration with the elementary school, but I just want to say that I'm really interested to continue to see the integration going through the district as these kids continue to grow and see how it will actually evolve throughout all the way through 12th grade. And I know that we already have some of that with some of the classes that are taught in the high school, but hopefully to see just the continuing development there.
Andy?
This is sort of a comment / correspondence, is that it has really nothing under our control as a school board, but I've heard from many constituents individually concern about the movement of the bus parking to the place on DW Highway versus where it currently is off of Star Drive. Now I know we are contracting the bus company. We don't say where they go, we don't say where they do. But there is this rising concern of people that are close to it, that the bus traffic in and out of that new parking area, which is behind the Summit Building on that stretch of road by Reeds Ferry Lumber, I believe, there's concern around that traffic. So I just want us to be aware as a board that's been raised. But aside from social media, I've 3 individual people reach out to me over the last few weeks about that fact. So.
Okay. Are there any other comments? No? Seeing none? We'll go to new business. Marge?
So I'm trying to do a forecast for you for the next meeting, which will be on July 17th. So at that time, the water testing results will become known. So Matt will be doing a report on that. We also want to have you entertain a discussion about having an architect come forward because we know that the Planning and Building Committee, when we go forward with the CIP, is going to be interested in talking about a new SAU office, and one of the ideas that has come up is about having an extension put on the high school. In order to have any kind of thought about that, we need to bring somebody to the fore to be able to investigate that. So we think the timing would be right. So we'd ask you to discuss it so that we could then perhaps engage someone in August, so that you would have this information as we proceed again with the budget. So we're trying to do as much as we can prior to that. So it's just to give you the thought about that.
Just to elaborate a little on that, so we're not bringing the architect in necessarily to discuss the look. We're bring them in possibly to discuss the impacts of...
Right. I want you to discuss whether you want one to be engaged or not, given the fact that some ideas have surfaced by the public. And I think in order for the board to go forward, that's going to need to be investigated, or someone will say it wasn't looked at. So,
just to add specific, when we went in front of the planning board, when we did our capital improvement plan, like almost a year ago, it was last fall, it was indicated to us it would be in our best interest as part of our options for an SAU building to discuss the cost and exposure of doing an addition onto the existing high school.
Okay. Can we send you questions? I think the discussion would be worthwhile. I think that I have a previous thought on it. However, I'm open to the discussion, but I think that maybe if we send you questions that can prepare that for...
To just be that you'll all have the collective thought here in July, so we can do something prior to, and again, it's to get oriented before we get into full budget. And then lastly, we are looking, talking about a partnership with Manchester Community College relative to automotive studies for the future. And so we are very hopeful that we'll have some folks here from Manchester Community College in order to really come before you and really do a proposal about what we're thinking about for next year. You might hear that we're going to try and have a session for parents and students who would be interested in this. We need to do an exploratory. We have no business coming before you and proposing something if there really is no interest. So we're going to be trying to engage those students and their parents in gaining some knowledge, try and find out how much interest there is, and if we see that, then we're going to bring people from the college so that we can talk about this. Would be something brand new we've never done before. We think this is a mark for the future, so we didn't want you to hear it after the fact. So those would be just 3 things that we'll be looking at for the July meeting.
Okay. Matt, you had something? Oh, you're all set? Okay. I want to make sure we're covered. Are there any committee reports? Andy?
So a week ago today, the 12th, yeah. And the calendar says July, so it's messing me all up here. We had a meeting of the CERES Board of Directors. Things I want to carry forward is that there is actually a lot of active interest in the CERES building, which is going on. As folks know from previous reports, the Board of Directors is separating the building and its function capability from the core services that CERES offers as a function. The good news is that CERES for the coming school year or fiscal year starting June to June, CERES will continue to offer the majority of the services that they have in the past. Some are not being offered, but the local districts that take advantage have been contacted, of which Merrimack is one of the ones, is there. So special ed has been involved in some of that, but the majority of the major programs are being there. And the Board of Directors is going to be looking over the coming months the viability of CERES as an entity moving forward. There's certainly value to the services that are offered by CERES. The districts in this region that are members of CERES certainly take advantage of it. If it's financially viable without the building and being able to exist on its own, then that's something that I believe all the Board of Directors want to continue, but that's something that will be done, and I'll give you updates as we go through during the summer.
Any other committee reports? Seeing none, I'll just give you an update on Greater Woods. There was a bridge that we supported coming off of Bambi Lane. It went over a brook and leads right to the outdoor classroom, which is on town property, but adjacent to the middle school. So if it gives you an idea if you've ever been back there. And the bridge is complete. So a couple of benefits. Obviously, it's safer for the students. The students are drier coming in. They won't be walking over water or in water, as the case might have been a few times. So it's going to be, it's already in place, so the kids can use it right away. And then Thursday's town council meeting, there's an Eagle Scout that's presenting the outdoor classroom. And the way that the agenda is worded, it sounds like it's at the middle school. And the outdoor classroom, although it is a very great resource that's appreciated by our middle school, it's located on town land. So any confusion may be that's the middle school's outdoor classroom. It just happens to be one that we're probably the biggest users of, but it is on town property, and that's why this Eagle Scout will be coming before the town council proposing that he rebuild the outdoor classroom, which is very exciting for us. So we look forward to supporting him as he goes forward, but the official will come from the town council on Thursday. And seeing no other committee reports, we'll go on to item number 14, which is public comments on agenda items. We are alone, so I'm going to close public comments on agenda items and go to 15, which is a signing of the manifest. We'll take a moment to do that, and I will entertain a moment to adjourn. A motion to adjourn, made by Michael, seconded by Naomi. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries 4-0-0 with no surprise. Thank you and good night.